Morning, Blake and Aaron. How are you?
We
Good.
are good.
How are you?
Awesome.
Great.
What do you got for us this morning?
Was just listening to some international news.
Mhm.
So, not good for us, I suppose, but OPEC Plus is actually meeting today looking to cut oil production
Mm-hmm.
by at least a million. And what that means for us and the entire world is increased pricing again.
I don't know how they can just
It's
like get
just,
together and
oh
do
my
that,
gosh.
What they
It's,
do is they drop the news, and then you're like,
and then
okay.
everyone goes,
Automatically, you're like, okay, higher prices. So then you just anticipate it,
yeah.
and you have to be okay with it.
yeah. Well,
You don't have
apparently,
a choice.
the allegation is that they're trying to help increase prices for Russia. And
Yeah.
so
Uh,
we will see it could return, they're saying, to $100 a barrel. And so analysts are watching this situation really, really carefully.
Somehow
And
Mhm.
I
it'll be
guess,
Biden's fault.
I'm
yeah,
sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So they're meeting in Vienna, Austria today. And I guess by tomorrow we'll know whether it's a million barrels or 2 million barrels. But even a million barrel will put it back at the $100 a barrel, which is the highest prices that we saw over the summer. So we'll certainly update everyone because that has a trickle down effect on everything from, our electricity cost, prices obviously at the gas station and so on. So we
Mhm.
shall keep you all updated. So we were in court yesterday, catching some court news.
Okay.
Couple interesting developments. Christopher Bush was in court, and he is one of the persons that was recently arrested for an imitation firearm and having ecstasy in his possession.
Hmm.
He was
What's an
asking for bail,
imitation firearm?
Like a
like
made
it's
one.
not a real gun.
Oh,
Oh, I get that, but
Yeah. Oh. I'm
like
so
like,
like they went into their
yeah,
kid's toy chest and just
so is that illegal?
well,
I
if you
think
fake like you are using a real gun, I mean, it's still
Okay.
Yeah, I think that sometimes they modify weapons, and so they might not be like a real gun that's probably capable of killing anyone, but it's still capable of putting fear in people that it is a real gun, because
mm,
Gotcha.
sometimes people don't know. So the person who this was an interesting point because the person who's making the allegations, his defense attorney said, "Well, why would you believe him? There's no independent evidence that this incident took place in August." But the judge refused his bail application at this point, and he can certainly elect to send this matter to Grand Court. So we'll keep an eye on it and let you guys know what the outcome is. 10 migrants have arrived in Kimmenbrack yesterday afternoon. So this is a bit of continued information. We've been seeing increasing numbers since the COVID pandemic. I think we got a little bit of a break for a few weeks. We didn't hear any movement, but 10 more arrived yesterday in Kimmenbrack. So they'll go through the usual processing procedures. As you guys remember, some weeks back, a group of them actually left the jurisdiction because things were not progressing as quickly as they think or they want them to.
Hmm.
And so we have 10 more to add to the number, but they're being kept, at a secure location at the detention center if they've not yet been processed. But once they're processed, they kind of have free reign, free ability to, walk about and so forth. And
Really?
they're getting, yeah, they get support from the government.
hmm,
A lot of them apply for political asylum. So that process, if they do apply, the government has to allow that process to take place. And then the application is either denied or not, and then they're repatriated if it's denied. A lot of people questioning why the repatriation process can't happen a little bit quicker.
hmm,
Hmm.
yeah.
So the accident yesterday morning, I don't know how much information we provided because I think it was still a developing story. So there's a young lady around the age of 27 years old who was in a really, really serious car accident in the district of Town yesterday morning, close to Northwood Road.
That's sad.
And yeah, so she remains in the hospital, we understand, in critical condition. Some sources have revealed that she has some serious spinal injuries.
Oh,
Not bad.
So, yeah.
This is why
So, yeah,
people
yeah.
drive safely. It's not worth it.
do we know what happened in the accident? The cause, or
It was a single car accident. So, obviously the accident investigation officers are carrying out their investigations to get back to us, but probably the usual suspects, driving too fast, probably alcohol or some other substance involved, or just careless driving and
Mhm.
losing control of the vehicle. So she's very fortunate, though, to still be alive because when you see the scene, she went straight into CUC pole. I would say that she's very, very fortunate.
That's how my roommate, when I lived in LA, she was in a car and a guy was driving crazy. They were racing. They went into a
Mhm.
bowl and she's been paralyzed ever since.
Wow, that's sad.
Wow,
She
very
was,
sad.
yeah, young, in her 20s as well. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. So the National Trust has purchased more land for protected areas. This is a bit of good news, although the response from our readers have been, well, it's about time. So anyway, they purchased a new parcel of primary mastic forest to add to Cayman's protected area.
Cool.
And yep, they did a social media post about it. So congratulations to the National Trust. People are just wondering why they can't do more. Obviously, it takes funding, it takes money. And I don't know exactly where they get their funding or their money from, to be honest. So if you want to,
memberships and then donate.
yeah,
It's like
donate to
I'm
the
a
National
member.
Trust,
Yeah.
folks.
Just
Yeah.
become a member of the National Trust. You get some little perks from it, and
You help them do stuff like protect important.
What do you get?
yeah, we
areas.
just put well, it just depends on the year. I mean, yeah, it's just you get your card, you renew your membership. We have our
Mhm.
family. It's a family pass that
Mm.
and I think you get like an entrance into the botanical garden once and stuff like that. Like it, but it's more them
Yeah.
raising money for the
Yeah.
National Trust.
Absolutely. Speaking of the Botanic Park, over the weekend they released. They had a parrot released, function on Saturday morning. So
Mm.
we were very, very fortunate to catch that in footage, and we play that during the morning show today. Beautiful parrots got
Aw.
released. Yeah.
Cool.
So remember to treat our parrots kindly.
I love them. They're loud, but I love them.
Yeah, and they're very social creatures. You notice that
Yeah.
for the most part, they travel in pairs or more.
Yep, exactly.
But yeah. And two young Caymanians doing some life-changing scientific research. So congratulations to these young folks who are forging forward a path for women in STEM. So Emma Turnbull and Anja Van Gendren are on the cutting edge, it says here, of scientific research as they continue their postgraduate studies in STEM-related fields of virology and biochemistry.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. Emma completed a master's in immunobiology, cancer, and transplantation, graduating from Newcastle University with distinction this summer. And she's now starting a 3-year PhD program in virology. And she's going to be undertaking groundbreaking research looking at how human cells react with the lungs that are infected with respiratory viruses such as COVID-19 and influenza. So that's certainly cutting edge. And then Anja Van Gendern is completing her final year at, I think it's pronounced Uppsala University in Sweden, where she will graduate with a Master's of Science in Chemistry, Biochemistry, before beginning her PhD next year. And her field of study is going to be about the properties of enzymes and RNA.
Cool.
So yeah, very, very proud of these two young ladies.
Show offs.
I know.
So we love smart kids.
Yeah.
So congrats to them, and I'm sure they have made their families extremely proud.
Absolutely.
Those are some of your news headlines this morning.
Awesome.
Get Sandy Show in 1 minute right now on Bobo 89.1 FM. We'll see you tomorrow for Thursday headlines.
Bye.
Have a good one.
All right.
All right, folks. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. How are you guys doing? Let's go ahead and kick off the show this morning.
Peppermint, sorrel, ginger, beaver grass, or English. Get it ready. Your morning tea just got hotter.
Ooh, honey child.
On the cold, hard truth. Bobo 89.1 and Cayman's #1 talk show are bringing you morning talk like no one else. Monday Rewind, Impact Wednesdays, Caribbean Connections, and much more. Don't miss a beat with what's happening in the local community. Just keep sipping your tea.
What a mess.
Here's your host, live and direct from the Cayman Islands, Sandy Hill.
All right, good morning, folks. And again, happy Wednesday. We will have some of our Caribbean colleagues hopefully joining us a little bit later on in the program to bring you up to speed on what is happening in the region. Let me just grab my links real quick, if I may, for all of our online. Hold on one second. For all of our, what's up, folks? They often sit back and they wait for me to send it to them. So listen, I was just telling you guys that OPEC Plus, it's called, is actually meeting this morning, meeting today, I should say. And so what that means for us is that there could be an increase in, uh, or a cut rather, in oil production. So they're meeting in Vienna, Austria this morning, and they're going to decide in the next phase of production policy. So this group is comprised of OPEC and non-OPEC producers, and it's often referred to as OPEC Plus. They're going to be meeting, and of course, the oil cartel, as they're known, and its allies are considering an output cut of more than 1 million barrels per day. And this is what OPEC sources have said to Reuters and other media sources. And so, what this essentially means is that for us, that is going to be an increase in pricing. So they cut production. The commodity becomes that much more valuable, and it's going to go back up to the high prices that we saw over the summer. Now, there is a possibility that they're actually going to cut it by more than the 1 million barrels. If they cut it to upwards of 2 million barrels, you're going to be seeing a significant increase, which is not something that any of us, I think, are looking forward to. So, these are things that, listen, sometimes we don't all understand the complexities of international affairs, but at the very minimum, you've got to have a little bit of an idea of what is going on because of things like this. If you're clueless and then the prices go up again, honey child, you're going to be walking around blaming the government, saying, why can't the government do something about these prices? Well, the government of the Cayman Islands, trust me, does not have a seat anywhere near OPEC, and we have no control whatsoever over, things like that. So, we do our best here in the program to educate people a little bits and pieces, because at the end of the day, these are significant things that will impact our lives, and you need to understand who controls that. The people who control it are not the people who run our government, fair enough to say. Even the US might have little say in whether or not this happens. So the OPEC ministers are actually meeting in Austria for the first time in 2 years. And, people are saying that this is going to be a cut of some historic kind, which again is not likely to be favorable. So OPEC, some of the world's most powerful oil producers, are reportedly considering their largest output cut since the start of the coronavirus pandemic this week, which again is seen as a historic move that energy analysts say could push oil prices back towards triple digits. So that's $100 plus a barrel. So they're known as the oil cartel, folks. Know who they are. And the reasoning behind this could really be about the oil cartel in the Middle East trying to help out Russia a little bit, which is a little bit interesting because the situation with Russia and their current war. We haven't had an expert come on in a little bit, but there have been some interesting movements. A lot of Russian citizens have been giving up really on trying to be fighting in this war. And quite frankly, just the other day there was thousands of Russian citizens who were actually absconding and leaving Russia because they wanted no part of this. And I think they were starting like basically a mandatory draft. And so they were jumping on cars. I don't think they can really jump on too many planes, but whatever method they had of getting out of Russia, these men who were going to be drafted were leaving. And in fact, one guy even ended up committing suicide. I don't know if you guys heard this or not, but it's a really horrible thing. He is a social media influencer of sorts. And he decided, he actually left a video vlog about it. And he said, listen, if you're watching this, that means that I'm dead. And basically, I would rather commit suicide and take my own life by die at the hands of the Russian government, which he saw as murder. So I thought that was a bit of interesting logic, but I guess, in the end, at least he had the choice in how he was going out as opposed to his government dictating that he had to fight in a war that he had no interest in. So he ended up taking his own life. Very, very incredibly sad. But this is the strain that Russia's putting their people under. Some of the men fighting have, surrendered to the Ukrainian authorities with hopes of having them show some mercy on them. And then I think it was late last week, Russia had some sort of it was completely, I don't even know what to call it, but they claimed they had a referendum. Let's put it that way. And of course, nobody believes that this was legitimate in any way, shape, or form. But 7 months, here we are, 7 months into the invasion of Ukraine, and they said that they were taking certain territories that belonged to the Ukrainian government, and they were just annexing these territories. Now, by all accounts, what is happening in Russia, and we'll get our experts maybe next week to come on if we can arrange it. What is actually happening is they're not being very, very successful. And in fact, almost the day after announcing that they had this referendum and they were going to be annexing all of this land, they started to then abandon and retreat from certain areas. So I don't quite understand what their strategy is. I think, the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian government, although being at a disadvantage, this has been a David versus Goliath kind of war, that they have still somehow managed to really put up a substantial fight, a substantial resistance, which the Russian, Putin, or whatever the heck his name is these days, Putin, he did not think was going to happen. And so this has led to some interesting tactics for him and his government. So I was reading an article last night. It said the Ukrainian military's sudden and successful counterattack in Kharkiv region this month has left Russian forces controlling less of Ukraine land than they did when the war first started in February. So listen to how incredibly ridiculous this is. I mean, you would think that this man would just give up, right? And leave, but he doesn't seem to quite understand the term surrender yet, although his men are surrendering in droves. So imagine he actually now has control of less Ukrainian land than they did before. Unbelievable. So we will continue to keep an eye on this situation. Unfortunately, this situation has a direct impact on everyone in the world, causing all sorts of instability. We also saw North Korea, missile testing a couple days ago, and that was causing some alarm and distress in that region as well. So, folks, it only takes one or two world leaders to be unstable for the entire world, especially when they are countries that have nuclear arms and so on, for the entire world, my apologies, to be on edge. And that's exactly what is happening here. So the end of last week, pro-Russian authorities claimed that they conducted a referendum in parts of the 4 occupied regions of Ukraine. And then they said that they were annexing large parts of Donetsk. Forgive my pronunciation because I'm sure it's completely wrong. And another one called Zaporizhzhia. But yet, sources say that large portions of that actually remain in Ukrainian hands, although they have claimed that they have, annexed them. Of course, nobody believes that this referendum was legit. The entire international community is calling it a sham effort and that it's illegitimate. So, but the most surprising thing again is that even as this process was ongoing, Ukrainian forces were still taking back more territory in Donetsk, I think is how it's pronounced. And so everybody is kind of, I think, looking at the Russian Federation with a bit of a cross eye, a raised eyebrow, like what on earth are you guys doing? So, not entirely successful. I don't know what the outcome will be, but we'll certainly keep you guys updated. It says that, the Kremlin basically reiterated an attack on the newly annexed territories, and they would consider that to be an act of aggression. And this is something that could create a pretext for a new dangerous stage into the war. And we also was reading a few days ago that, my apologies, Ukraine is trying to make a bid to quickly join with some international forces to see if they can get some outside help. So, yeah, that's a little bit, of what we're being told. So it's a crazy world. And that's where we are. So possible increase in oil prices yet again. Folks, brace yourself. This is why when we were talking yesterday about even some of the financial decisions that perhaps you're making at this time, think wisely about what those are going to be. If you can cut costs in your life, if you can cut back on some of the luxuries that perhaps we've all enjoyed, you may have to do so for the sake of just being able to afford the gas pricing, the increase in gas pricing, which will definitely impact us in terms of our CUC bills and what we're going to pay at the fuel. And I know you guys are going to be complaining and moaning and groaning and the whole 9 yards about it. But you have to understand that we do not have any control over this. The government has no control over this. And dropping, I know all the brilliant ideas that are going to come forward about dropping, stamp duty and gas, all that kind of stuff, that will have less than a 1% impact on the actual pricing that you're paying. And listen, we rely on fuel, which is a position that we need to really start to see how we can get away from it. But even getting away from it is not as easy as you think. We do have some options, but ultimately those options lead back to generators and systems that are still relying on fuel. So, even for your own house, you have solar panels, you do what you can do. Those things will help to a certain extent. But until, larger companies and conglomerates and countries really start to move away from the use of fossil fuels and oils, it's going to be near impossible for us to see significant changes. But every little bit helps. I mean, we have to admit that we have to definitely do our part. And so you do what you can. And as the saying goes about, you pray for the wisdom to know what you can change and to also know what you cannot change. Because the things that you cannot change, you stressing about it and having, these protracted conversations as though you can do something about it is just what it is. It's going to just be conversation. All right. So good morning to Miss Vernita. Good morning, Marshall. On that note, good morning to Diamond Princess. Olivia is here. Felicia's got us joined as well. Jose says, good morning, Miss Sandy. Hope you're doing well today. Wanted to ask if anyone reported a missing wallet this weekend. Not that I can recall, but we do get a lot of messages, Jose. Sometimes it takes like days to try to go through our messages. I'm fine. Thank you so much for asking. I hope that you guys are doing well also. My sinuses are still a little bit all over the place. I decided not to take any I've been taking every night for about the last couple of days, this DM, I forget what it's called, some decongestant, whatever, which has really been helping, especially with the ticklish cough. But I decided last night not to take it. If you guys know me, I actually don't like taking medication. I hate taking medication. So I decided last night not to take it because I just want to kind of gauge where I'm at without it. So I got my tea here, which I'm going to be drinking because warm fluids is what I keep getting told. Drink lots of warm fluids, hydrate a lot, room temperature water, and all those things. And you also, if you know me, know that I don't actually like room temperature water. So I drink it, but it's, not my favorite thing. So yeah, so other than that, I'm good. Just trying to gauge how I've got some tissue here just in case I need it. Cause I feel like, cause I haven't taken that, my allergies might act up on me today, but yeah, thankful nonetheless, honey. Yeah. Very, very thankful for all of the mercies that we have every single day. We've got life, we've got health, we can get on our little hustle and work. So I was speaking to a young lady yesterday. Over the weekend, I gave out some Foster's food cards. There's a young lady who reached out. Listen, we have more than one young lady, young mothers who are reaching out who need help. And I wish I could help everyone, but unfortunately not. So we had promised some very specific people that we would assist them. And I was able to get another young lady a gift card yesterday. We have people who are asking for help with the CUC bill. And, where I can personally help, I will help. But of course, I've got my own expenses and they ain't cheap, honey child. I've got a child who's in private school. I have that mortgage payment every month. I've got that CUC bill and I don't get the abatement in pricing because I am a higher end user. So I got to find that money and pay that all by my lonesome. I'm not going to, any MLAs or anybody else begging for help. I've always just wanted to be able to work and make my own living in life, right? When you've got a particular set of skills and you recognize that your skills have value, you just don't want anybody holding you back. And there's so many times in this community that people do try to hold you back, which is unfortunate. And so I feel like we're finally at a point where, as it relates to CMR, that isn't happening. People are surely understanding the value of what we have to offer here. And, people who own other companies also see the value of getting their messaging out through our platform. Some people think that they can get it for free, which is kind of funny because I had to say to someone, they're like, oh, my mom owns a business. Can you just help us promote it? And I'm like, I'm in a particular business and I do help a lot in the community, but there certainly comes a line when it comes to business that I have to draw. We had a thing, which I might start back doing, but I don't know how impactful it was, where we would do like a small business Thursday post where you could put in the comment section, what your businesses are and whatever, and people can kind of read through that and you can promote. I don't know how much that helps, but I said to them, if I don't make money, how am I going to pay my bills? I'm going to be in the same position as you, begging people for help. And, that just doesn't make any sense. So you can be altruistic in business up to a certain point. And then you also have to recognize that, it costs money to do the things that we do. So here at CMR, we do quite a bit. And you'd be surprised the expense and the outlay that is involved in producing and doing the things that we do. Now, I've always been very, very thankful because they've been advertisers from day one, even when there were naysayers who were like, you know what, we see the vision, we see this amazing platform, and we really want to be part of it and to help you. On Friday, I saw someone at the Heart Fund and they were like, oh, your platform, congratulations, you've like really elevated yourself and this and that. And I just smiled politely because the truth of the matter is not much has changed in terms of what we do. We still cover some very salacious stories and some very salacious situations. We give you the sus. We talk about the gossips. We still show you the videos with adults fighting in the streets like they're not even children. Not even dogs really fight in the streets like that. I don't know what they are, but whatever they are, they're out there fighting in the streets like idiots, really. And not much has changed. I think what has changed isn't from our perspective, but it's from the perspective of other people now being more accepting of what it is that we do, which is interesting because they think that we have changed. And like I said, I just smile politely and say thank you. And then, go on about my business. Obviously, what else has changed is that our platform has grown immensely. So right now, I think we're pushing almost we're over 73,000 followers on, where's that? On Facebook. And I think close to 25 on Instagram. So yeah, that has changed and people just read it more and they pay attention. And, I suppose we have tweaked a few things. And there are people who, have come around, shall I say. Good for them. Thank you. We appreciate it. So, it's you also have to know your worth and you can't undervalue yourself or undersell yourself either, folks. It's a really important lesson in knowing your worth and knowing the vision and understanding what the game plan is, even when nobody else does. You got to just stay focused. So good morning to Karen. Barbara is here as well. Dean is here. So Jose, I will have a look at our messages to see if anything else has come in. what I would say, Jose, is that, man, we get so many messages of lost and found. Somebody actually said, y'all need to start charging people for these lost and found posts. No, we wouldn't do that. To me, that's the community service that we do. And, sometimes we are successful. We do help people reunite with their items. I mean, you'd be surprised at things that we've helped people get reunited with. And so we do our best in terms of that. I think it is, like I said, a way to give back to the community. And sometimes the posts do get a little bit like there are people who are looking for, they have a property, they want to rent it. I'm like, listen, we're not you go to EK Trade for that. We're not a rental property market. We're not really into that. What we've done is if we have like single moms or, even a young man, he was looking for a place. He's a, limited budget NAU clients, people who are reaching out with kind of like they're in a prickle, if you will, when it comes to their housing situation. Those we tend to post because we've had really good success as well. Sort of bringing people together who are able to help them. There was a young lady who was looking for a sharing situation and her budget was $500. 2 people reached out, I think that was on Friday, to say, I have accommodations, I can help her. I'm looking for a roommate or I don't want to say bedmate, but that's practically what they are these days. People are actually sharing a specific room. They're not even just housemates anymore. And so we were able to give her some referrals. And I think that her situation was sorted out. But that's not really, we're a community-based news platform. So we will do some of that, but I, of course, don't want the entire platform to be all of that, if you know what I mean. So like Little League, they're having open registration right now. So if you've got kids, folks, boys and girls ages 4 to 15 are eligible for Little League. We also have the girls softball, which is open for ages 9 to 18. Have your kids get involved in all of these, really healthy activities. So they reached out to us and they said, listen, last year you were kind enough to put up our Little League information on your platform. It was really, really helpful in getting the word out there about, all of the people who are, all of the options that we have as part of the Little League program. We were wondering if you could do it again. That's YMCA nonprofit organizations. We're always happy to help them get the word out there in terms of what it is that they do. So yes, absolutely. We do those things at zero cost to those organizations. Here it is. If you're interested, 2023 registration is now open. So check it out, littleleague.ky, or you can call 916-5643. So yes, we help out in this way as much as we can with nonprofit organizations, letting you know precisely what's happening in the community. But we're not really here to engorge individuals financially. So, if you're running a business and you've not considered the fact that you need an advertising budget, then that really doesn't become my issue. Capiche? You got to find a way to be creative and to find a way to get your messages out there when it comes to how to promote your business. I always say I'm a business owner and I have been for over 20 years now. And you know what I always say? It takes money to make money. You got to spend money to make money in business. And it's just one of those things. And if you're in business and you think that you can make money and not have to spend any, something is wrong with your understanding at a very basic level of the world of business, because that's not how it works. If you have an apartment, I know apartments are pretty much a hot commodity these days. You should be in a position, folks, to know how to rent those things yourself, right? It is what it is. So some of you will send stuff and you'll notice that it doesn't really get posted. It's because we don't want to become a platform of, we're just posting rentals every minute, or we're just a platform, to tell you that somebody's struggling with their CUC bill. People have to get creative on their own about how to get assistance with these sorts of things. CMR is not going to be your only and sole solution. Like I said, we help where we can, but there has to be some degree of balance in all of it. So good morning to Stephen. Miss Daisy's here. Nikki is here. Nikki, have you returned on island yet? Buenos dias to Miss Alba. Scott has got it locked on. Juanita says no sound on Facebook. I'm pretty sure if there was no sound on Facebook, everybody would be telling me that. So sometimes you just got to refresh your connection and then it'll come up. Good morning to Siobhan. Tommy's here. And Pamela, good morning to one and all, she says. Evelyn, good morning to Carmelie. Everton says, good morning, Sandy. Greed, greed, greed will kill you when you remind me of the greedy dog with the bone the entire world turned against him. Well, unfortunately, we live in a world that is, let us be very, very realistic, that is being operated by, and probably always has been, the elite. I'm watching a new TV series, by the way. It's called, oh gosh, hear me testing my brain now, but it's about Queen Elizabeth I. Oh gosh, let me see what it's called again. Is it called Inventing Elizabeth? I think it might be. I don't know. But anyway, I don't even know how many seasons it is or whatever. I don't watch a lot of TV. This is kind of crazy, but I don't actually watch a lot of TV. And what ends up happening is how I get into a new series is my husband will turn it on. He knows already. And he's just like, watch this. Episode 1, season 1. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I start to binge watch a little bit, Becoming Elizabeth. And honey child, I am on episode 6 now, I think, of season 1. Like I said, I don't even know if there's more than one season, but can I tell you that this show is really, really addictive? It must be just in season 1. This show is addictive. And all of the things that we always knew, even back then, about how women in particular had no control, and even men to some extent. You were born into the position that you were born into life, and there were certain expectations of you to have to live up to that, whether you wanted to or not. So if you were born, a peasant, hello, you weren't likely to be moving from that position. And even as a princess, a princess might have certain luxuries in life that the rest of us certainly didn't have, which is great, all these crown jewels and whatever else. But there were also expectations, like you didn't necessarily get to choose love for the sake of love or marrying someone that you actually cared about. You had arranged marriages. Sometimes you were forced to marry your own family members, or foreign, royalty from other countries in order to secure certain alliances and so on. So life has never been easy for the underprivileged folks. And some instances, it's not easy even for the privileged. It's not as easy as you would think in terms of the decisions and so on that they have to make. You guys know in countries like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and so on, the royalty, especially the women in those countries, don't have a lot of say. I mean, right now there's a whole thing in Iran about, women's rights. And there was a young woman who was killed by some morality police. It's just crazy that we live in 2022 and this sort of stuff is still happening, where you're going to be killed because you have a social media account or whatever. It is just, it's disturbing, but it is the reality for a lot of people. So, as we sit back and complain about our lives, my God, when I hear that, you're killed because you have a social media account with a couple hundred followers, a couple thousand followers, and somehow they think that, that's something that your life, I mean, it's just crazy that you deserve to be killed for. Women are still getting lashes. You could receive apparently up to 74 lashes, right? These are the conditions that people are living in, like for real, legitimately. I say for real. My daughter says for real life when she's like questioning, is that real? So yes, these are the things that are real. There was an interview that was supposed to happen last week with CNN correspondent reporter. Oh gosh, what's her name now? But anyway, she refused to do an interview wearing she refused to wear this is Christiane Amanpour. She refused to wear the hijab for an interview. Now, she's actually of I don't know if she's Iranian, but she's definitely of Middle Eastern background herself. And she apparently politely declined the Iranian leader's last minute demand that she wear a hijab in order to interview him. She's, chief international anchor. And here comes this world leader, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, or whatever his name is pronounced, demanding at the last minute that she wear a headscarf as a matter of respect during an interview planned for, this was last week, Wednesday. And this prompted her to politely decline his offer in what is said to be an unprecedented and unexpected condition. This is what she said. She said that, she has interviewed Iranian leaders for many, many years, and she has never had anyone make this request of her. She is respectful, I think, because she obviously understands the culture, being from that culture herself. She will dress appropriately for the interview. She's a veteran journalist, and she has spent, in this case, weeks preparing and planning for this interview and setting up all of the logistics. And then this request was made at the last minute, and she said no. And so the president, he refused to participate because she said that she politely declined. And what was more interesting, she said, we're actually in New York where there's no law or tradition regarding headscarves. And I pointed that out. And I pointed out that no previous Iranian president has required that I have interviewed them in this manner outside of Iran. Now, obviously, if she was in Iran, I think she would have not objected because that is the culture there. But she's in the United States of America, in New York, of all places. Talk about diversity and free choice and freedoms. And here we have the Iranian leader who's showing up, telling her that she does not have this freedom in New York, that he wants her because she's in his presence to wear a headscarf. And apparently his aide instructed her that the interview would not happen unless she donned a headscarf, telling her that it was a matter of respect, while referencing the situation in Iran, which is an obvious allusion to the widespread protests. And women are protesting there. Women are cutting their hairs, or doing all sorts of stuff as much as they can do in protest. And so she has said no. She said, and so we walked away. The interview didn't happen. As protests continue in Iran and people are being killed, it would have been an important moment to speak with President Raisi. I think that's how you pronounce it. Oh my God, knows. So she stood her ground on American soil, which I don't think anybody can blame her for. Unbelievable. Now, of course, in countries like this, they have their state-controlled media. They're claiming that the 22-year-old Iranian woman who was killed because she was detained in allegations that she violated Iranian law, requiring women to wear headscarves in public. And they claim that she had a heart attack. The morality police out and about. So right now they're having one of the largest displays of defiance against the Islamic Republic in years, as demonstrations have erupted in the wake of Mahsa Amini's death in custody. So, women in particular are part of the protests. Go check it out, folks. You got to keep up with what's happening around the world. Do not stay in the dark, because I think that once we understand that there are other people around the world who are fighting for fundamental freedoms, we in this country must join the fight at some level, even if, folks, it is just having the discussion, educating our people about how whatever you think of life in the Cayman Islands, you still enjoy a good degree of freedom, believe it or not. All right, Jonathan, good morning to you. How are you? So good to see you. Ms. Vernita says, Sandy, I pray all is well with you and your family. I wanted to know if there's changes to the visa or waiver program being changed. Can you be more specific? This is the visa waiver program to go into the U.S.? No, they don't make changes kind of willy-nilly to that. So I'm not sure. Did you hear that changes were coming? What would be the reason for changes to be made? I think the visa and waiver program has been what it is for a very long time. Everton says some of us need to get out of our comfort zone We always think life is going to be one way forever, but things will change in the course of our lives. So we just have to prepare when the time comes to make changes. But some of us don't want to make changes because we're too comfortable in our ways in our life. Well, Everton, the one constant in life is definitely change. You've got to be fluid. And I agree with you that change is inevitable. It is the one thing you can count on in life is change. And so nothing remains the way that it was 5, 10, 15 years ago. Even last week, things have changed since then. And so you have to be fluid. You have to be somewhat accommodating, depending on what the change is. And you yourself have to be open to changing potentially the course of your own life. Everton got his flu shot. Speaking of which, the HSA has announced that flu shots are now on island. It's anticipated to be an active flu season. So in particular, if you're one of those vulnerable categories of people, which I think right now we all are, to be honest, go out, folks, and get your flu shot. Elderly people, younger folks, if you have any immunosuppressant issues, diseases, whatever, you want to try to protect yourself as much as you can from any respiratory illness because it can kill you, whether it's COVID or just the regular flu. Stephen, good morning, joining us from the UK. And you can hear my sinuses already starting to get a little bit agitated, but that's okay. I got my tissue in hand. Everton said, because some people don't understand being in business, it can be costly overhead costs. Yeah, I think that sometimes we kind of just find our way. We fall into business, and there are times it can be successful, and there are other times that it can't be successful. And, there's a lot of lessons along the way. There are business courses, folks, that you can take. If you're interested in being in business, you need to understand so many different things from marketing to customer acquisition and retention and, how to provide good customer service. There are a lot of different elements to being in business. Some businesses are much more challenging than others. Like I would never get in the restaurant business. Sometimes y'all know I love to throw down in the kitchen. I love to cook. A lot of people are like, oh, Sandy, open up a restaurant. I'm like, you gotta be crazy. No, thank you. Honey child, the cost and the overhead required in the restaurant business is astronomical. And I don't think that people recognize what it takes. And a lot of times you are not making a profit. You're taking money in, but if you really sat down and had someone do your books properly, what your outlay is for staff, for cooking supplies and materials, your cost of goods, what you're spending on gas and electricity and this, that, honey child, you ain't making no money, despite what you think. It just doesn't work that way. And so, people just kind of feel like, oh yeah, I'm making money. No, you're not. In your head, you're making money. That's because you don't understand finances. And that's why sometimes you see people mark up their goods in a particular way. And if you understand markup of goods, you're like, why are you marking it up like this? They don't get it. There's some goods that perhaps you can, mark up higher than others. But some people think, oh, everything I bring in, I will just, double it. Mark up 100%. And it's just like, okay. And what is your market formula based on? The cost of the goods is one thing. So what you acquired it for. A lot of you think you can go and acquire something at a retail price and then resell it to retail in this market. Well, people are now smart. They're smarter than they used to be. People have access to be able to jump on a plane, go overseas, and do their shopping, order it on Amazon. So they can check pricing to see how competitive your prices are. I walk around my phone. If you ever see me in a store doing this, you know exactly what I'm doing. I open up the Amazon app and I scan the barcode. Yes, that's my right as a consumer. And, I scan my barcode. Amazon has the ability, and I can see if Amazon has it, if it's available, and what the cost is on Amazon. And then I think in my head, okay, it's 50% less than Amazon. I can just order it, keep it at my Amazon mailbox during the next trip. And then I bring it in, I get my little duty allowance. I make an assessment. Is this something that I need right now on island to pay your jacked up prices? And it very well may not be. And so as a consumer, I got to be smart with my money, honey child. It's hard to come by. So good morning to Yan. How are you? Nathan is here. Cameron says, your consistency is unmatched by many. Well, I appreciate that. I think it's important in life to be consistent. Cameron says you got that stateside hustle. Well, listen, folks, I have been hustling from the day I was born. I feel like literally, even when I was, did I tell y'all my very first business when I was in middle school? I used to buy candy in like bulk. And this is back in the day, like this was a long time ago. And then I would turn around and resell it to kids at school. So if I bought a pack of like 25, packets of M&Ms or whatever, I'd turn around and sell each one for $1.50. And my peers would gladly pay for it. So, that was my little extra money that I had, my little hustle. I used to recycle with my uncle. We would go and collect all the cans and bottles that we could. And then when we saved up enough, this is before recycling was a thing. I have been to a recycling, it might have been super fancy back in the day, but we would take in all of the cans and bottles to a recycling facility in Tampa. And they would give us, 5 cents for each bottle, 5 cents for each can and whatever. And because I was a good part of the work that was required, my uncle would actually give me a part of the money. And so that's another way that as a teenager, I made money. I wasn't allowed to work or anything like that. And as an international student, I wasn't allowed to have a job. So, this is what I did. This was my side hustle. I used to, y'all don't even know the hustle, child. When I moved back to Cayman, my dad had a little restaurant here, Top Taste restaurant. That used to be for my father. And so, I went in there and I'm looking at the very unsophisticated arrangement, but nonetheless, I was like, okay, I see you, daddy. I see you, daddy Uric. You got a little hustle going on here. And I said, I can add value to your hustle. You don't have any dessert. Who has a restaurant without dessert? Even if it's a Caribbean restaurant. I said, Dad, you need some like cake and brownies and whatever. And he's like, oh yeah. And I said, here's the deal. I'm going to bake my little brownies. I'm going to make my little cake. And, I'm going to sell them in the restaurant. Is that okay with you? And he's like, sure, go ahead. So I had such a demand. He's like, oh, people love your brownies. People love your cake. So I did that for a minute. Yep. I would bake and take it in, leave it there with Miss, what was the woman's name again? Oh gosh, I can't remember the little Jamaican lady's name that he kind of had like his head chef or whatever. And yes, I would leave it there for her and, it would sell out and she'd be like, we need more cakes. You know what other side hustles? Sometimes I forget how many side hustles I've had, like little businesses. So when I first came out to Cayman, cell phones were just coming in to their own. And so here in Cayman, they were still relatively difficult to come by and expensive. So I got a batch of, these were like the big Nokias back in the day. I got a batch of those at a decent price in the US. They were unlocked and I brought them. My dad bought one from me. He told his friends and his friends bought one from me. Yeah. So I sold cell phones for a minute. Child, you do what you got to do. Listen, once it is an honest living, that's the most important thing. You don't sell drugs. You don't get into robbing people and gang banging, all that kind of stuff. No, you do it an honest way. People will support you. You'd be surprised. I never thought really that my life would be as an entrepreneur. I got to be honest with you. I was happy going a traditional route, going to law school, working for somebody else. And when I look back on it, the truth of the matter is, as I said, from I was a teenager, I've always been an entrepreneur, just that I didn't see myself as that. I was just like, I just need a couple dollars and this is an honest thing to do, recycling cans, whatever. And that's what I did. Morning, Cheryl, joining us from Prodigy Jewelers this morning. Benji's here. Richard and Celine are watching. So yeah, these are the things that you do. And when you have children and young people, encourage them to want to do these things. There's nothing wrong with them wanting to, work a little bit harder, do their own little businesses. Sure, make them do that. So Everton says in the restaurant business, you have to be consistent with your product. You can't be switching up one day the food is good and the next day the food is bad or no good. I have quite a few friends who are in the restaurant business, and trust me, it is tough. If you stay consistent with your product, you'll be okay. Well, there's so much competition in the restaurant business as well. Lavana, she's a small business owner in the restaurant business. She says, thank you for mentioning the restaurant. It's really hard and people think it's a lot of money. If my restaurant wasn't in my yard, I would have closed long ago. The cost of goods now is ridiculously high. Yes, I mean, I get it. The cost of, think about what it costs you to go to the grocery store and to feed your family. A lot of these restaurants do go to the wholesalers and they might save a little bit, but it's still costly. They still have a lot of overhead. They've got, like Lavana said, she doesn't have to pay additional rent, but a lot of people have rent to pay. They've got the grocery bill to pay. They've got staff and pension and so on. And I'm going to talk about pensions a little bit this morning as well. So when you're not in a business, it is unbelievable that you don't understand the costs associated with running that business. That's why sometimes I try to give people a fair shake. When we talk about CUC, I'm like, do you know the cost to CUC to operate? Yes, they're making a profit. Who in business is not trying to make a profit? All the hospitals trying to make a profit, right? Hello, nobody wants to be in the hole. Ms. Vanita said, isn't it free to advertise on the internet, e.g. Facebook, etc.? Has anyone asked Ms. Sandy if she can help? Well, you might think it's free to advertise and you can put up a post, but if you really want your post to reach people when you don't necessarily have that reach organically, you have to pay for it. So no, a lot of times it isn't free to advertise on the internet, but I'm glad you asked because that's important to know that it isn't always free. And really it's about the reach. The reason why people come to me for any kind of post is because we have a substantial reach. Otherwise they just post it on their own page. But if they only have 10 people viewing it on their page, that doesn't help their cause. So there's a cost to doing these things, even though it is digital advertising is what we call it, Ms. Vernita. There is a cost associated with digital advertising. So Cameron says that we're starting to accept this narrative in Cayman that the world is going through worse. So we should ignore some of our pressing issues, and accepting the narrative in Cayman is dangerous. We know we're blessed, but that doesn't mean that we should build on those blessings, that we shouldn't build on those blessings and strive for our cup to overflow. Well, I think you build on what you have, Cameron, but I also think that you have to be realistic about what your cup overflowing now means in 2022. The money isn't flowing like how it was in the 80s and 90s. Let me just put it that way. So I don't know what your definition is of your cup overflowing, but I think you have to be mindful of how we look at these things. And this is where it comes back to individuals being held accountable and responsible for their own actions and their own decisions, right? If you cannot afford a 4,000 or 5,000 square foot house, by all means, do not get one. You have to think carefully. So I see people all the time overstretching themselves. It's great to have all this space. And you know what I say about homes? The more space you have, the more you tend to fill it with stuff, buying stuff that you don't even need sometimes. I get trying to live a nice, comfortable life, but you got to be reasonable. So the bigger you go, the more your expenses are going to be. You got this big lawn that you got to maintain. Now you're going to be paying CUC more money. There's a reason why as you get into your senior years, it's oftentimes a good idea to downsize. You go from the 5,000 square foot house to the 2,000 square foot house because you don't need any more than that in your senior years. You're not trying to run a marathon around the house. So you just want to cut back. Dean says, had my experience in the restaurant business, Sandy, I overworked myself just to make a salary for myself. Never really lucrative at all. That's the truth, honey child. Dean says, Sandy, don't know if you know where to sell, but candy is a really good side hustle. Listen to me. There's a lot of businesses out there that don't have as much overhead as you think. They're good money. In the States, vending machines placed in a good and proper location is an extremely lucrative business because they just sell themselves. You just keep it filled up, keep your customers happy. with the products that they want. And yes, my dear, selling candies and chips and sodas and water, lucrative, lucrative, lucrative. Even when we have festivals, having a little booth set up where you sell stuff can be very, very lucrative as well. You just got to think about the different things that you're interested in, and not everything is going to be successful. Sometimes you fail, and in the failure, there is a good lesson to learn also. Miss Darlene says there's a lot of things that our children and young people can do back home. I think the problem is that they are too proud to hustle. Some, that is, child, please never be proud to hustle in an honest way. Now, we don't hustle with no negativity and no selling of drugs and all that kind of foolishness. But hard work, learning to work smarter, those things never kill nobody. Cameron says that you could take those old Nokias through the depths of hell and still call to make reservations to heaven. Yeah, they were tough phones. I tell you what. They were like, whew, made it something tough and tough plastic and whatever. Miss Shannon, good morning, says even now Caymanians need to downsize what they want realistically in a house size. Good morning to Debbie. Yes, I feel like sometimes we want too much, and we're not realistic about what it takes to get there. Let me read some of your WhatsApp comments. So this person says, let me see. Oh, another police shooting in the States, unarmed homicide. Lord Jesus, what is wrong with these police officers? So someone says, making money and making a profit are not the same thing. Yep. Oh, somebody's sending me a picture of a pumpkin cheesecake saying CMR does a lot to help, but we sure as hell ain't donating to that event. So let's talk about this event that this person is referring to. Now they're going to drizzle caramel on top of this pumpkin cheesecake. Wow. And you're sending me this for breakfast because Ciao. All right. Let me just have a look at this. All right. So yesterday, someone sent me this, and I'm kind of two minds on this situation. So Barbara says, I split my house into rented the top half and never paid a day of mortgage. Hey, child, you gotta make a sacrifice. I personally have never wanted, and I guess if you're in a situation, you gotta do what you gotta do. But I personally never wanted renters staying with me or in my space. Like, I'm very, very protective of my space. I've always been this way because I am very active in the community. I feel like when I'm in my space, I don't want people around me. It's as simple as that. I choose to invite a handful of people. That's why I tell people, if you've ever been to my house by invitation, not the police knocking on the door talking about, oh, we want to come talk to you. That's not an invitation, honey child. And even them, I've told them, don't come to my door. I said, you have my number. You know how to reach me by phone. You simply call me and say, Sandy, we need to see you, and I will come to the police station. I actually told an officer that. I said, sir, do you know me? And he says, well, I know who you are. And I said, good. Because if you know who I am, you should know that you have not been invited to my residence, and I don't want you coming here. Especially about the foolishness that he was coming to my door about. I said, don't do it again. I said, this is a phone conversation at best. I don't need to see you in person. You guys waste a lot of time thinking that I need to see you and other people need to see you in person. Just call me. And that's just how I am. I don't like people in my space. So for me, that would be something that would impact the quality of my happiness and the quality of my life to have renters up under me. But like I said, you got to do what you got to do. If you are on the verge of, listen, I've done it before. Don't get me wrong. When I was in law school, on my little law school hustle, there was another law school student who needed a place to stay. And what would have been my office and my extra space was another bedroom. And so for a number of months, she was in a bit of a predicament. And I rented out my room to her. But it wasn't going to be a long-term arrangement. I was helping her out, and I got a few dollars in the interim. Fine. She's now a magistrate, honey child. Imagine. But yes, I wasn't into no long. Listen, you're not here to stay for long. I'll help you out in an interim situation. But a lot of times I see people even looking for housing. They're like, oh, do you know of anyone that I could just come in and crotch with them and stay with them? And I think to myself, I have a 1, 2, 3, 4 bedroom house, only one child. So only 2 bedrooms are really occupied. It's not that I don't have room, but I would never invite you into my house because I don't want you encroaching on my space. This is my downtime. If I want to walk around the house half naked, that's my business. If I want to put on my little shorty shorts, you know what I'm saying, and walk around in my underwear, that is my business. I don't want anybody looking at me. I don't want anybody saying to me. I don't want anybody going in my kitchen, in my space. That's just how I am. That's why I don't believe in living helpers either. Nope, and nope. You work for the day and you leave. And I'll see you tomorrow. So everybody's got to do what they got to do. Now, I don't mind a rental property around the corner, up the street, across the street, down the block. But it's not going to be in my house. I just think that, listen, if I have worked incredibly hard in my life, the least I should be able to do is have my home be the way that I want it. And I don't want nobody looking over my shoulder. If I don't want to have a conversation with anyone, I don't want you talking to me. You know what I'm saying? It's like, this is my time. This is my chill moment. I do what I want to do. And it is what it is. Good morning to Miss Iva. Dean says people need to do a business management course before venturing into business. It's profits, pay salaries, etc. Well, this is important because yesterday I was in court. I'm going to give you all a little bit of court update. And I must tell you that I was sitting there in awe of a couple of things. So Miss, what's her name? Oh gosh, I don't even know what her name is. Miss Scott from Champion House was there. Now this case has been going on from Jesus was a baby. So she was in court for non-payment of pensions. And I have a couple thoughts on this, right? Let's take a little commercial break because as you can hear, my sinuses are really getting irritated. And this is a very, very important message about a labor force survey from the ESO. So pay attention to this message, folks.
The Fall Labor Force Survey is currently being conducted by the Economics and Statistics Office. The Labor Force Survey collects data on employed and unemployed persons. Trained interviewers with ESO ID cards will visit randomly selected households in all districts. The interviewers will exercise appropriate COVID-19 protocols using personal protective equipment. The interviews are confidential in accordance with the Statistics Act. No individual data will be published or disclosed. Survey data are exempt from freedom of information. For more details, please call the ESO hotline at 516-3329.
Recover Personal Injury Attorneys, helping injured people get what they deserve. Did you know that insurance companies have lawyers that represent their interests? Before signing and accepting any settlement, know your rights. Call us today for a free consultation at 924-9999. That's 924-9999. Recover. Your personal injury attorneys are on standby to assist.
Crichton Properties is one of Cayman's most trusted real estate companies for over 50 years. We offer a diverse selection of property listings and help our clients navigate the world of buying or selling their properties with confidence. Crichton is a name you can trust with our excellent customer service and family-friendly touch. Contact us today to list your home, land, or condo for sale by calling 949-5250 or email info@crichtonproperties.com. Crichton Properties, a trusted Cereba member.
All right, folks, welcome back. Katsina says, let's be honest, Sandra, most restaurant profits go permits. Walk in a restaurant, you will see all staff of 10 or more in permits. There goes the profits. Well, there's a lot of things I would say that could eat up profits. But let us also be very honest. A lot of Caymanians do not want to work in the restaurant industry. Just a couple days ago, I had a business owner, owns a business in town, and they said that they needed to vent. And let me tell you what their ventation included. They said, let me just read it to you. I know somebody's like, pumpkin cheesecake, where can I get some of that? This is what the person said. This was Saturday morning. Hello, my love, how are you? I'm gonna have a rant now. Hired a Caymanian part-time to start roster on Saturdays. Very busy days, all good the last few weeks. Mr. Quietly, hopefully. Today gets busy and stressed, and she walks out on us. This is a problem. How can you run a business when this can happen on a permit? They can't just leave you in a lurch. Well, they're unlikely to do so, that's for sure. Anyhow, rant over, but really annoys me sometimes. So, we talk about people in certain industries. The truth of the matter is they can't get reliable Caymanian workers in those businesses. If you're smart and you're running a business, a restaurant business, you start from home where you have little to no expense, and you maybe get into the delivery services or people do pickup or whatever, because, once you open up an actual location and people are coming into your business, there goes your expenses. And yes, it's not cheap to have people necessarily on work permits, but the alternative sometimes, Katsina, is to have no one at all working in your business, and then you're in a lurch. So Perla says, Sandy, is your block button broken? You used to use that button a lot. If we don't need crazy people in the CMR space, please use it. Are you seeing someone that's been crazy? I haven't seen anybody. So I'm not sure why Perla thinks it should be used, but no, it's not broken, but I don't see anybody that deserves to be blocked yet today. Everton says, I agree with you. I like my space. I remember my daughter needed a place and I rent her a townhouse and paid her rent for 1 year. And she got the job that she was looking for so she could take care of herself. Yeah, sometimes you don't even want family living with you, honey child. A spouse, well, you kind of get to choose them, Cameron, don't worry. We got you covered in that discussion tomorrow. Damien says, knowing who to hire also helps. Many hire without the right questions and experience. But those are the same people, those are the same Caymanians walking around saying that they can't find a job and nobody wants to hire them when they need to be looking at their own track record. So let's talk about court yesterday. So I went to court. I got a bit of a pleasant surprise because I went there to hear a particular case, and it ended up being the two guys that were recently arrested. One for imitation firearm, Christopher Bush is his name. Him and another guy, I don't know if they were related, but they both had the last name Bush, which doesn't necessarily mean they're related. But anyway, so they're both involved in a situation here. Christopher is 31 years old. And, what a mess with these young people. I got to tell you the truth. I do not know. They're just ruining their lives with this gangster lifestyle. And like I said, two options: jail or in a box, in a pine box, and somebody's crying over you as you're being buried. But anyway, they don't seem to care. They don't value their lives. So, well, their 31-year-old has been charged with possession of an imitation firearm and possession of a controlled drug, MDMA, which is commonly known as ecstasy. Anyway, 31 years old, he's in court and he's trying to get bail. So they're making the bail arguments. We'll put up the article later on because y'all need to read it. Needless to say, his bail was denied. Then Miss Scott was there. I think her first name is Dorothy. Miss Dorothy Scott. I always forget that she's actually related to the deputy premier. I don't know why I always forget that I think that's his mother's people. Yeah. So anyway, I believe she's actually his aunt, if I'm not mistaken. So Miss Dorothy is there. Nice enough lady. But again, running a restaurant and seems to not really have a lot of clue with certain things. So she was in court for not paying pensions. Now I really implore this government, the PAC government, to prioritize pension reform, because this is one of those things that really gets under my skin. Paying pension and insurance is the cost of doing business. If you're in a business and you can't afford to pay pension or health insurance, then you should not be in business. Those are not optional costs. It's like paying somebody a salary. You can't not pay someone a salary, right? And what you have people doing is people are getting into businesses when they can't afford it, or they don't see it as a priority, which is a problem. They don't understand the laws that they have to operate under, because maybe they were in business 20 years before the pension law came into effect, and they just continue under that regime. What is most egregious, and I've heard magistrates say this before, is when you take money out of someone's pension plan, and it should be earmarked to go, or someone's paycheck, my apologies, and it should be earmarked to go into a pension plan, and that does not happen. Folks, that is the very definition of theft. There is no simpler definition than that. But we have this lackadaisical crock pot of a pension law that is so weak. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. Okay? The weakness of this pension law means that people get away with murder when it comes to your money. They take your money out of your paycheck, do not put it in a pension fund, and they spend your money on God knows what. And honestly, I don't care what they're spending it on. That is not what it's for. Now, it would be one thing if they weren't taking it out, but when they take it out and they don't put it in a pension fund and they don't pay it, folks, that's theft. Same thing with insurance. They're taking out your money for you to co-pay an insurance, and they don't even have an insurance policy for you. You drop down with a stroke, and then you find out you have no insurance coverage, and you got to try and find that money and get in debt personally. And the laws that are on the book with the Pension Act, as it's now called, are dismal at best. We need pension reform. So little Miss Dorothy at Champion House, bless her soul. I think, there's a couple of things that she makes on the menu that are really good. And she has like a little catering menu, which I guess a lot of people don't necessarily know anything about. I'm not really sure. But folks, she clearly doesn't understand the finances of operating her business. The court ended up thanking a lady who came in. They said, oh, she's the accountant. She's been so helpful, and trying to even determine what was even owed. So back in October of 2018, we reported on this story, and the headline said, Champion House pension case drags on for 10 years with over $177,000 owed. Now they've reduced it because, I'm sure people have gone and there was probably not able to verify even certain things in terms of what was done with people's money. So now people are gone, and they brought it down. She made a payment of almost $70,000, which included the interest payments. And so people are applauding in court. Well, oh, thank God you finally paid this. Well, yeah, that's good. But let me be very honest with you, folks. You and I couldn't steal $70,000 from people and not spend a day in jail. There is something inherently wrong with a law. My apologies. That has no teeth. And that's exactly the problem. Now, it was the case, supposedly, that the original pension law said $500 a day for every breach. But geez and peace, when you sit there and you hear what actually goes on in court, well, her lawyer said, well, Your Honor, that was amended to, I don't even know, I have to look at my notes. I think it was like, instead of $500, it's now like, $25 a day or something stupid, some reduction. And so that would have happened under the progressives government. Again, watering down of legislation that is meant to help people. What is the point of having pensions in place if it's useless? Really? Y'all tell me what's the point of it? You might as well not even have it. Doesn't make any sense. So she got fined for the most serious offense, which the judge like, oh, this is not the most serious case. I like Magistrate Foldatz, but sometimes he is a little bit soft. I find him to be a very reasonable man. But there are times that I look at him and go, oh, his little heart is so soft for people. $4,500, I think, or $4,300 is one of the fines. $300 here, $300, $500. That's it. I'm like, well, damn. Who's going to be deterred from not stealing pension money from their staff? Other place in the world, that is like an egregious offense that will land you behind in jail. That's what happened to what's her name? Epstein's girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell or whatever. That's what her dad did. He was a millionaire. And one of the ways he was funding his big time lifestyle is he was actually stealing from the pension fund of his employees. Yes. And so she grew up in a very privileged environment where daddy was sending them to the best private schools and this luxurious life and living, this Robert Maxwell was his name, living this beyond luxury lifestyle, private yachts, this, that, and the next thing. And come to find out the man was a common thief, stealing from the pension of his employees. Oh, here they are in 1987 going to the Cannes Film Festival. Listen, you can live a fabulous lifestyle. That's your business, but you cannot live it dishonestly from ill-gotten gains. You don't do it on the back of other people. And these poor workers, they're working their fingers to the bone for organizations, not with hope of any immense reward, a little bit of a paycheck to pay your bills, and a little bit of something in your pension plan, which you all know that that's not the full plan for retirement, but it might help a little bit. And then someone like him stealing from people. So he didn't have the nerves to face what he had done, right? So he ended up killing himself, committing suicide at the age of 68 on his $15 million yacht called Lady just Ghislaine, or whatever the heck her name is. Really? Here's what was said about him. He was a man who could not face the enormity of jail, of being shown to be a liar and a thief. This is what someone said, some Roy Greensdale, who's former editor of one of Maxwell's newspapers. He was a newspaper giant, apparently, including owning the Daily Mirror, as he very much knew that was coming. So I am a suicide theorist. I believe Maxwell threw himself off because there were some people who was like, oh, was he murdered by the Israeli intelligence service? No, he was a coward who was a thief and a liar, as this man said, and stealing from people's pension money. Yeah. And so he jumped off the ship, off the luxury $16 million, $50 million yacht, and killed himself. Such a sad end, because he rose from an impoverished Czechoslovakian refugee situation, became a decorated war hero, a businessman, a Labor MP, and then a media mogul, amassing all sorts of wealth, private jets, helicopters, Rolls Royces, and the works. And yet couldn't get those things in an honest way. Yeah. Had lots of businesses, the Mirror Group newspapers, New York Daily News, Oxford United, Derby country football clubs. This man was an enormous figure in British national life. He lived a life, rubbed shoulders with royalty. And then November the 5th of 1991, he ends up committing suicide, really because he was stealing. Within weeks, they found out $460 million missing from the pension funds of his companies. Lord Jesus. This is what someone else said. A borrower of an unimaginable scale, again, when you can't control yourself financially, he had illegally raided the funds to prop up his empire, which was on the brink of collapse. Headlines such as "The Man Who Saved the Mirror" were swiftly replaced by "Maxwell the Robber." Oh my God. Can you believe it? Sad undoing. But this is what happens when you think that you can steal from people's pension funds. In the United States of America, in the UK, you are going to jail. Well, in Cayman, you're going to pay a fine of a couple $1,000s, maybe. Remember there was another woman who owed that Chin lady, I forget how much money she owed, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And once again, she wasn't going anywhere. Wasn't paying anything. When I say going anywhere, I mean the pension amount owed wasn't being paid. At one point, the magistrate, I think it was Hernandez, she came up with this pension amount that she could pay. And the magistrate was like, "Woman, if I allowed you to pay that, it would take you like 30 years to pay back what you'd been stealing from people. You need to make some adjustments to your lifestyle." Because while on the one hand, I'm trying to find the articles here in CMR about this one. I can't remember her first name now, something Chin. So while on the one hand, she was claiming that she couldn't afford to pay this money back, she was living in a big 4,000 square foot rented house. And the judge said, "Hold on a second here. Oh, but I have children that live with me." The judge said, "Your children are adults. Make your children find their own way. Why are you supporting adult children while you have been stealing from your workers?" Huh? Really? Teresa Chin, may she rest in peace. She's now deceased. Over $100,000 in unpaid pensions. The fact that she's deceased doesn't change the facts, right? It would take over 36 years to pay it back based on what she was suggesting, the terms her and her attorney were suggesting the terms should be. Travel agent offers to pay off pension debt over 36 years, but Jesus, really? By then, most of the people who working for you would be dead. This law is ridiculous. Magistrate Hernandez questioned Chin's need for a 3-bedroom house when owing over $100,000. Look at the size of this house. Come again? People have no scruples about them, folks, when it comes to doing the right thing and following the law. $250 a month is what she claimed she could pay. Really? My God. And people are so duplicitous and dishonest that she had this defunct travel company, 123 Travel. Then she turned around and set up another company called Fahrenheit Limited, sole director, and was operating other companies that I don't know why DCI and Pensions Office are not doing more about collaborating with each other. If you have outstanding pensions, a history of non-compliance with the pensions law, the health insurance law, and so on, you should not be able to get a business license for no other business. That doesn't make any sense. You're allowing people to put themselves, as Caymanians would say, in a worse situation. Even the judge acknowledged she's paying $1,700 per month in rent. She said you're living above your means and you need to sort yourself out. Why do you need a 3-bedroom house? Oh, her daughter and her granddaughter reside with her. So the judge said, what? Your daughter should be working and paying her own rent for herself. Why is she with you? You downsize and get a 1-bedroom. Here's what the judge said at the time. She says, we don't call it theft under the pensions law, but that's what it amounts to. People need to cut their suit according to their cloth. Now, Magistrate Hernandez is a real Caymanian to say something like that, because y'all know exactly what that means. Anybody confused about what that means? You cut your suit, you cut your suit according to the cloth. So in other words, if you don't have cloth for a big time suit with all these frilly parts and whatever, you can't have it. Live within your means is what the judge was saying. You go out of business back in 2015 and you owe all this money and there are no real prospects on how you're going to pay it back. But now this is where I'm going to blame the government. And I'm not saying this current government. I mean, God knows they got to add it to their list of things they need to fix. But there are too many laws out there that have no teeth. They might as well not even be there. There should be no requirement for you to pay pension with laws like this. Because when you don't pay it, there are zero consequences, really. And it's ridiculous. Now, poor her, she, like I said, set up another travel agency, had it named after her son, her grandson, Julius Tours and Travel or some foolishness. One shop over from where she had the defunct agency. Can you believe the audacity of people? You have done this and then you go open up shop, one shop over. And DCI gave you a business license? Somebody allowed you to have this company? This is what I'm talking about. This is where the system has failed. Former government minister. This is something I need to follow up on. Mr. Donovan, have you been paid all your pension money by the former minister, Dwayne Seymour? Let me message Donovan. Yeah, I'm aware that she died, folks. Trust me, I'm not trying to say anything ill of the dead. I'm just speaking the truth. This man, again, another example. Mr. Donovan from Jamaica reached out to us back in 2019, saying the minister owed him money. And his company, that is, owed him all sorts of money. And, listen, Lord, the only thing I ask of you is to always make my lips tell the truth. Because I revealed this during the COVID pandemic. When the government allowed people to take a pension break, one of the things that I was shocked at is that they allowed everybody to get a pension break, even if you were having issues. And I thought, wow, that's a bad idea. And here we are 2 years on, you're just having to start repaying pensions again. So people who are already in arrears, who are not paying pensions, got the benefit of not having to pay pensions for 2 years. And guess what? That also means that they did not have to pay on the arrears and the outstanding amount. Now, you would think if they were any kind of person with a moral compass at all, right? Or a little bit of business sense, they would have taken that 2-year break and get caught up on the people that they owed pensions to, but they weren't doing that. And the way in which the progressives pulled through that law, there was no requirement for them to even do so. Imagine, this is the slackness that we talk about all the time on this program. It's even more egregious that it was a minister in government. I need to ask Mr. Panton, has now Parliamentary Secretary Dwayne Seymour paid this? I'd be watching y'all with a very keen eye. I see y'all when you're in court for not paying spousal support and other things. It's not that I'm trying to embarrass you, but if you are the so-called leaders of this country and you yourself cannot follow the laws, but Jesus, what is it going to be for the rest of us? Right? All of us have to follow the laws. Well, that's what the books say. No man is above the law. And yet we have this situation. What a mess. Here's another one. This man here owed over $161,000 in unpaid pension. Yeah. All these counts against him. Had an electrical company. Y'all go read the story. And then turns around and gets a managing director job. A good job. With NCB Group. And he's part of the ownership. And you're still not paying into your pension fund. Y'all have no consideration, honestly. And because the law has no real teeth, because I can assure you, had you stolen $161,000 in any other method, you would be in jail. So the fact that you're not in jail, you're not fined, these cases go on for years. This one went on 12 years. Numerous enforcement orders that nothing is done. Folks, we need a complete revamping of DCI. That's the business licensing folks over there. Give that law some real teeth. So if you're operating without insurance, you're operating without paying pension, you have a business license, or you don't have a business license and you're running a side hustle on the street without even having a license, which right now is only $75, you need to do better. Right? So now that lady has died and those people will not get their pension money. Y'all understand what I'm telling you? You do not allow, and I say this all the time with a mortgage. Listen, if you miss a mortgage payment this month, the bank understands that the writing's on the wall. It all happens to us, but I can tell you, the way that mortgage payments are done, like I tell you about that interest, you're mostly paying interest for the first 60% of that loan, the life of the loan. So when you start to make payments 5 years in, 10 years in, the bank goes, oh, geez, here we go. Yeah. They don't wait for you to miss 5 years worth of payment. That's stupid. And for those of you who sit down and push through this narrative that this is how it should be, oh, don't take people's homes. Nobody wants to take people's homes. I tell you, the bank don't want your home. They make their money if you keep your home and you keep making your payments. But the second you miss one payment and two payment, it becomes almost near impossible for you to catch up unless you come into a windfall of money, which is unlikely to happen. People are like, oh, but I told the bank I'm trying to get a better job. How is that going to help you? Because you still got to catch up on all of these payments. And sometimes even if you were doubling up, because of the way that that interest works, you're still behind. And the bank knows it. And unless there's some prediction of a drastic change in your circumstances, your financial circumstances, you are in a world of trouble and you're going to lose your home. The bikes understand the reality of it. By the time you've missed 2 consecutive months, the writing is on the wall. Even if you get a new job, even if you start to pay a little bit extra, because all you're doing is paying interest, which is going up because the principal has now increased because of missed payments. Same principle to be applied for pension. You miss 1 or 2 months of paying pension. Why allow people to go 5, 10, 15, 20 years of not paying pension? Why are you issuing all these enforcement notices? My apologies about my sinuses this morning. Because it doesn't make any sense. You're only making someone get in deeper. Morning, David. David says, taking bank card terminal fees of 3 to 5% out of your pay is theft too. Who does that? They're taking bank terminal fees out of somebody's salary? I couldn't imagine that that would be lawful in any way. So Marshall says Miss Dorothy should know better. She's been in business for a long time. But I'm telling you that unfortunately, people who have been in business for a long time themselves do not always know what they're doing. Wanda says pension reform. Yes, we need it. Morning, Ronaldo. Cameron says the other day, someone asked me if I could take out a permit, and I said I can't afford to pay pension and insurance. And their response was, you don't have to worry about that. I was flabbergasted, you see? And this is the slackness that is happening in this country. We need a crackdown on DCI. They're issuing business licenses with no due diligence, no checks, no nothing. And I'm telling you, this is not for the benefit of this country. Half these people running work permit scams. They're just taking out a business license to take out permit and don't even have work for people. It's ridiculous. Really, truly. Cameron said they said that we need to get national IDs, too much slackness. Well, listen, I think the national ID system is going to be coming probably first quarter of next year. I know that they had prototypes out that they were testing, but how does that really solve the problem? All this fancy technology and you still have laws in the book that will fine you a couple $100. That's not a deterrence to breaking any law. Trust me. We need some real reform in a couple key areas. Everton says stealing from poor people, no morals, greed. They don't care about the people that break their backs for them. That's why sometimes you're supposed to look at these people, all these luxury things, because they're a thief with who steal from the poor people to get where they are. Such a disgrace. Good morning, Jean. Jean says, regardless of pensions, I would love to retire. But how can any of us in the private sector live on $1,000 a month? I challenge any MLA to live off of that. Jean, first of all, I think that people don't understand the concept of pensions. And this is a failure on successive governments. But since the pension plan came into, was it 1997 or thereabouts, 2000 or something, that they made pensions mandatory, there's been no real education of the people about what that even meant. Your pension plan is not meant to be your only retirement plan option. It is meant to be one stream of revenue. So you get $1,000 from your pension plan, and you have here, I guess we don't do 401ks or whatever, but you're supposed to have other investment mechanisms to be living off of, whether you've got rental properties or whatever. Listen, they, whoever they are, have failed us miserably when it comes to financial planning and understanding how to even prepare ourselves for retirement. The sacrifices that you should have been making for the past 30 and 40 years of your working life to get ready for it, to have your different streams of revenue, that can continue to make money for you although you are retiring. So you've been hoodwinked if you think that your pension plan was designed to be the only thing that will sustain you during retirement. You will never retire because no, you cannot live on $1,000 a month. Marshall says the progressives watered it down because some of their members were stealing from their employees. Oh, Lord Jesus. Good morning, Miss Dawn. Her name is Lurleen Shin. Okay, I don't know. May she rest in peace, but those people not getting their money. Izzy says 36 years to pay it off, and she stole it quick from people. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yep. Jim is stuck in traffic. He says, sitting in god-awful traffic again. Why doesn't this GT beautification involve a couple 3 over-the-street pedestrian crossings, especially for all the cruise ships? Oh, God. I can tell you that that's not going to happen in town. But it's a hot mess. An hour and 50 minutes in traffic and not got to work yet. Crawley, barely on North Church Street. Wow. Everton says that's the idea, the whole idea. Stretch it out. And, people will die and she'll never have to pay back that money. It's an unfortunate situation. Unfortunately for her, she was the one who passed away. Yeah, Everton, I saw the thing with Elon Musk. Can I tell you, I think that man is bipolar. In a serious way, I think he's bipolar. And he's got all the money in the world. He needs to get professional help. Cameron says, we've been asking this for years. Why aren't these departments working closely together to identify all this stuff? It's like talking to the breeze around here. Huh. We got to do better. So she's been fined. Hopefully she's learned a lesson. I don't know. I don't know if anyone has given her financial counseling. If somebody's going to just take the business over for her. I think at one point she was just trying to rent it out to somebody else who probably or hopefully knew what they were doing. And, a lot of people don't come forward about their pension plan not being paid into because they're foreign nationals. So they don't say anything until they're ready to leave. And that's like 7 years later. Flashpoint says you can't expect laws in the Cayman Islands to hold businesses and business entities accountable. It's by design. Cayman is built on the abuse, formal and informal, of workers. And this is very, very unfortunate. All right, we do have our guests here in the studio with us this morning, Mr. Damian Wilson from TCI. So we're going to check in with Damian. And I'm going to just take another commercial break so I can try to get my sinuses sorted out. But Damian is going to be chatting with us, so make sure that you stay tuned to keep it locked here to the cold, hard truth.
Are you tired of overpaying for TV services? Can't figure out VPNs? Constantly missing your favorite TV shows? And no access to the good stuff on streaming services? The frustration is real, but it doesn't have to be. Contact Roque, Cayman Streaming Pros. We'll put you back in the driver's seat in front of your TV. Call, WhatsApp, or message Roque today on 926-1213. Roque is not a TV service provider. Terms and conditions apply.
The Cold Hard Truth is Cayman's #1 talk show since it debuted in March 2020. According to independent research, we are the most listened to talk show in 2021, and most people prefer us to any other options on island. We tackle tough issues some days, and other times have fun and lighthearted discussions. But most importantly, the Cold Hard Truth is here for you. Thank you for your support as we continue to be the voice of the people in 2022 and beyond.
In the mornings, no one wants to miss listening to the Cold Hard Truth or reading CMR. Cayman's #1 news platform has made your morning commute fun again. Pass this time with the Cold Hard Truth on weekdays from 7:30 a.m. Talk radio that's engaging, entertaining, and enlightening. But be careful. Some mornings it's so hot, you might run into a bit of trouble.
Okay, folks, welcome back to the program, The Cold Hard Truth. That's what you're listening to. Wednesday, Caribbean Connection Wednesday. We have Mr. Damian Wilson, who's joining us from TCI. Morning, Damian. How are you?
Good morning, Sandy. I am great. And good morning to your listeners and the entire Cayman public. I hope you guys are doing well also.
Yes. Well, we're not going to try to complain too much. As I say, there's always someone out there who has it worse than you, better than you, and you just have to be thankful for what is. So listen.
Go ahead.
Yes. We spoke to you last week and we had an absolutely engaging conversation. I know that some of our morning or radio listeners were not able to listen in because we kind of went into a little bit of overtime. So we're going to keep it very, very tight this morning. But, such engaging conversation, but I was most disappointed to really hear that this past week, just a couple of days ago, you had a tourist that was killed in TCI because of this gang violence that we were talking about last week. So, oh my gosh, where do we begin? Tell us what happened. What do you know?
This just happened on Sunday evening. Unfortunately, over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, they had more shootings. And what happened with the tourist, who happens to be an NAACP leader in Austin, Texas, or was an NAACP leader, which is just brings even more attention to the situation. Apparently him and another tourist were coming back from an excursion with the guides from the local tour company, and a van just drove up to the dock and just opened fire on them.
Oh my God.
And
wow.
Yeah, and persons in the community heard the shots, called the police. The police intercepted the van, but somehow escaped. They got to the downtown area, and there was a shootout between the occupants of the van and the police, and they literally shot up the front of the police vehicle. Pictures show the windscreen of the police Jeep riddled with bullet holes. 2 officers were shot. Luckily, they didn't die. Eventually the occupants of the van got away. The police believe that they got away, but they believe that they shot several persons. One of them in particular, who was suspected of being one of the shooters, they found him a few hours later in one of the migrant communities dead with with gunshots to the head. So they assume that he was one of the persons in the vehicle.
And so they're now trying to eliminate, I guess, persons who were involved.
I mean, what the police believe is that he was actually shot by police when they returned fire. And I guess his colleagues just dumped him on the ground and left.
Oh, wow. That is unbelievable.
The thing about it is it's creating more tension because the governor has now confirmed that the majority of shootings are being done by a gang that is known to be predominantly Jamaican.
Jesus help. So let's talk about this, because obviously this is very, very concerning. First of all, as a jurisdiction that relies on tourist dollars, even here in Cayman, I think TCI relies more on tourism than we do. And so
far more.
Yeah. And no one ever wants to, recently we had the CTO conference, TCI and other regional countries were here in the Cayman Islands for that, talking about the importance of tourism to our GDP and our economy. No one ever wants to hear that a tourist has been killed as part of any violent act in our respective countries. So to me, this is a sad day, not just for the people of TCI, but for people all over the region and all over the world, because people will clump us together as a region. unfortunately. Sometimes
Definitely.
of us as individual jurisdictions and individual countries that have any element of uniqueness. When they think about the Caribbean, they're like, oh, yeah, that's the Caribbean. They don't know that we can be unique and we can be different. And we can have, immense differences between us. So this has the potential to really hurt our industries and our respective countries collectively. So to me, this is a dark, dark day. I think for the entire Caribbean region, obviously specifically for TCI.
I
I
think the
heard that.
I was going to say, I think part of the issue, and I think this is where regional cooperation comes in, is that regional leaders, I don't know if they've noticed, but there's been an increase in gun violence across the region. We're now seeing, the Minister for National Security in Bermuda spoke about over 1,000 citizens being involved in gang
Yes.
violence in Bermuda. You're seeing complaints coming out of the Bahamas, out of Jamaica itself, other places. So this is a regional problem that has now reached our doorstep and may continue to spread if we don't do something about it. Because even the governor here, he made a speech at the opening of Parliament on Monday where because originally the police didn't confirm any of the details, but they were confirmed by the governor on Monday when he delivered a message just before the throne speech. And, he spoke about the transnational nature of this whole situation, of the guns, the drugs, how it's being backed by foreign interests and all of these different things. And so you realize that it is a problem that is bigger than Turks and Caicos. And we're just one, I think we're just one country on the way to the US, because much of this is being fueled because of the drug trade in the US. And I think if regional leaders don't start paying attention, we're all going to be dealing with this problem. And
Wow.
I always say, if we need to realize that everything is connected. As long as opportunities are harder to come by than crime, you will always have crime. And that is what we have to realize, is we have to make opportunities easily accessible for our people. And I posted something last night. I said, I find that in Black countries, former colonies seem to make it as difficult as possible, or have the least intent in creating opportunities to empower their own people. We seem to like to place obstacles or roadblocks in the way of ourselves. And, sometimes when you do that, things like this will result, because if people don't see a future or a way to, provide for themselves legally, then they're going to do it another way. Now, that being said, there is also the issue of illegal immigration, where we have significant illegal immigration coming from Haiti, Jamaica, and the Dominican Republic. Not nearly as much as Haiti, but we know that, or rather it's been said that these are the locations where these guns are coming from. They're coming from the US, but through these countries.
So incredibly unbelievable. Wow. I mean, I'm in a state of shock. So
you and most of the public here, I think we all were shocked when the governor actually admitted that the police are ill-equipped to deal with the situation. That's not typically something you would hear a governor say.
So, your governor also talked about this transnational movement of people and, weapons and drugs and criminals. What can be done to curtail that situation? Are these illegal migrants that are in TCI that are coming from Jamaica and Haiti, or are they in your country legally?
Some of them are illegal. There's a considerable number of them that are believed to be illegal. I know of one person that was actually deported by immigration officials here and is back in the country, Jamaican national. And how I know of that is, again, speaking to persons on the street that are close to some of these situations and talking to them, and they're like, well, hey, you know, this guy, he was deported for gang activity and he's back in the country. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
You know, so
And how did he come back in? How through what means are they entering a TCI?
by fast boat.
Mm-hmm.
They're
So of
coming in.
course, your country is a little bit different. How many islands do you guys have? A number of islands, yes?
We have 40 islands and keys, and this is this is one of the things that was speculated in terms of the incident on Sunday, right? Some persons in the public are inferring that some of the employees of these tour companies may be involved in actually transporting the drugs, because several persons that were shot lately have been employees of tour companies. And like I said, it's not been confirmed by officials here, but speaking to persons on the street, they tell you that what happens is a lot of these guys at the tour companies, you know, they're making minimum wage probably, and what happens is that these gangs say, hey, we're going to have a boat drop off some drugs on an island nearby, you go and collect it and bring it to us. And apparently that's what's happening, you know.
What is your curious to know, what is your minimum wage in TCI?
$6.25 an hour.
So pretty much what, and that's US dollars or?
Yeah, US dollars.
So that's technically just about what it is in Cayman if we do the conversion, I think. So, but let me ask you a question then. If that is the case, this morning I was talking about, you know, having, as a young person when I was younger in high school and stuff, having a legal hustle, you know, selling chocolates at school and doing all this kind of stuff. The truth of the matter is the illegal stuff will always net you more money. There's never going to be an argument that if you're selling drugs, laundering money, that's fast money, it's easy money. And, you know, you don't oftentimes have to work terribly hard for it. Obviously, there are some inherent risks that come with it, but you can't just be comparing the money component. You can't just say, oh, well, someone, even a lawyer, will get involved in the laundering of money and other illicit activity when it comes to the drug trade, because the money there will always be better than the legal activity. So how do you, in people's minds, I mean, I have the answer to this. You just have to raise generations upon generations of people who understand that easy and fast money, although it might be a lot of money, still is not good money, because you end up dead or in jail. And those are the two options, really, right? You don't live a life that is carefree.
The thing about this, Sandy, is that, and I always tell people I'm a big believer in culture, and I believe that culture touches every facet of life.
Absolutely.
And the thing is, culture is a mindset. It's essentially the programming. It's the software of the mind. And if we have people that have been, you know, brought up in a culture where they believe that this is the way of doing things, right? Like we have, and I'm not saying that this is every Jamaican or every Haitian, but clearly it's the ones involved in these criminal activities in TCI that believe that, hey, this is the way to make money. This is the way to go. And what that is then in turn doing is influencing, you know, persons here, because you now have, where you didn't have previously, you now have local gangs being involved, right? And the police are aware of this. So it's essentially a tough war between foreign nationals and local gangs. And so they're fighting over a lucrative underground market. And the problem is, the longer this goes unabated, the more entrenched the mindset becomes, because people believe they can get away with it. And I always say, when crime becomes a culture, that is when it is essentially very difficult to get rid of, because now people believe that they should do it. Right? Because it is what everybody's doing. And so we have to make it where people understand, one, that if you commit a crime, you're going to be caught. You have to make it where people understand the risk of crime. If you are not caught by the police, you're probably going to end up dead or in jail, like you said. And so it's not a carefree life. But at the same
Yes.
time, we have to ensure that there are alternatives, that people are aware of the alternatives, that people can see the alternatives. And so I'm not saying that it is a large number of our young people, but a considerable number of our young people have chosen to go in the other direction. And again, you see the influence, right? You see the influences, because just like most of the Caribbean, we have persons being deported from the US for similar activity and returning to the TCI, and they say, hey, well, police here aren't as active as police in the US, so why shouldn't I be involved in this activity?
So we have a map up on the screen of Turks and Caicos. These are some of your islands here. So we have the East Caicos, South Caicos, Conch Bar. Yeah, we see some of the larger landmass, but you guys are spread out a little bit.
We're spread out quite a lot, and the island where most of this is taking place, or rather all of this is taking place, is Providenciales, where you see Blue Hills, the Bight, Five Keys. Five Keys in particular is almost the epicenter of all of this.
Wow.
It is a predominantly migrant community. It is basically run by migrants. The police keep denying it, but persons in Five Keys say the police are scared to go into Five Keys.
When I'm looking at your location in relation to Jamaica and Haiti, for example, it's not even that you're particularly close. I mean, let's be honest, they're closer to us. So what is it about TCI that makes you that much more attractive for these gangs? Like, why go? Because I'm looking at this map here. We see the Cayman Islands down at the bottom, and of course, Jamaica would be a little bit further down than that. You're a little bit closer to Haiti, so I can understand the Haitian Dominican route, because quite frankly, they're sort of the closest, I think, other country other than Cuba. But what makes Jamaica, do they go through this windward passage in order to get to TCI? Is that how they're getting to you?
I'm not sure of the route they take, but the thing is, Turks and Caicos has a history with Jamaica for quite some time. We've had a cordial relationship where TCI even was administered by Jamaica before Jamaica became independent.
Right.
So
very similar to Cayman as well.
Yeah. So when Jamaica went independent, we had the option of going independent with Jamaica, which we voted against. And so you have a large Jamaican population that has always existed in TCI. A considerable Jamaican population, a considerable Haitian population. And for many years, the country has largely been probably the most peaceful country in the Caribbean, And I think in some ways that kind of lulled us.
Other than the Cayman Islands.
We'll take up that debate later, but I think that kind of lulled us.
They've had very similar paths, I feel like, TCI in the
Cayman Islands, and I think
which
Cayman
is concerning
Islands,
in a way, because we see what's happening with you guys, and it's
listen. I think Cayman Islands, Bermuda, and TCI, more so than any of the other territories, have had very similar paths through history. We seem to mirror each other quite a bit. There are parts of Cayman that I could swear, if I didn't know it was Cayman, I'd tell anybody it's the Turks and Caicos. And so right down to our physical features, right down to the people, right down to the colloquialisms in terms of language, we have very similar paths. And, I think the fact that we've largely been a really quiet country for many, many, many years, it kind of lulled us into this false sense of security that we'll always be like this. And I remember last week you said that, the officials in Cayman are like, oh no, it's only it's only a few people. It's nothing serious. That is literally what the officials here originally were saying. Oh, it's nothing serious. And now, lo and
Mhm.
behold, several years later, it's serious.
Yep. And I mean, this is why I think that the information that you're sharing is so incredibly critical, because we've mirrored each other so closely, and I feel like TCI is a cautionary tale of how quickly it can go from bad to worse and worse, the most
I mean,
horrific
when
situation.
you think about this, a lot of this didn't start until I would say probably around 2013. You really didn't see a lot of this until around 2013. That's less than 10 years ago. And so in 9 years, we've gone from almost zero to, where we are now. And
Yeah,
so
and it is so
it can
unfortunate that
escalate quite
Jamaica.
quickly.
Yes, and it's very, very unfortunate that Jamaica has any sort of a hand in this, because, as you may know, again, similar situation with us. Jamaica used to administer the Cayman Islands as well. When they went independent, the Cayman Islands decided not to go independent with them. We remained in overseas territory, and but over 50% of our population here in the Cayman Islands are Jamaicans also. So we've got Jamaicans from all walks of life. I mean, the vast majority of our police force are Jamaicans. The vast majority of our prison officers are Jamaicans. The vast majority of court people in the court system are Jamaicans. So we have a strong Jamaican presence, even in our households and our families. My
Sandy,
grandfather on my mother's side was a Jamaican. It's just, yes.
same thing in TCI. The vast majority of our officers are Jamaican. The vast
Mhm.
majority of our prison officers, Jamaican. Persons in the court system, Jamaican. I have several Jamaican family members. I used to go to Jamaica like 4 times a year. So it's concerning, but it shows you that criminals will take advantage of any opportunity that they
Yes.
can. And so I'm not going to blame it on all Jamaicans, right?
No,
And,
of course not.
yeah, I'm not going to blame it on all Jamaicans and say that,
Yeah.
This is Jamaica's fault. But I'm going to say that we should have understood and do our own due diligence on some of the persons coming into our country and understand the background that they're coming from, right? And I always tell anybody that culture travels. People bring culture with them. So if they believe a certain thing, they're going to bring that with them. And we have to understand that. And a lot of aspects of culture are not necessarily from the wider culture, but it can be personal or specific to certain people, certain areas, and we have to understand those things.
Yeah.
And so people aren't going to get
criminals. Yeah, criminals travel too, right? I mean,
Exactly.
unfortunately.
Exactly. And so because of our close relationship with Jamaica, criminals took advantage of that. So we allowed persons to come into our country that we know over the last few years that there have been persons with criminal records, right? And coming from Jamaica and other countries and got involved in criminal activities here. Does that mean that
I'm
we could
sure, I was just thinking, Damien, I'm sure that in many respects it was easier for them to infiltrate TCI. Number one, less competition probably from competing gangs, where in Jamaica you might have multiple gangs in different territories. And it was just easier because your police force probably had no clue how to deal with this type of gang activity.
The thing is, our police force, I was speaking with a former police commissioner that said, the police force itself hasn't actually grown in terms of manpower and, tactics and equipment since the late 1990s. So we literally have almost the same size police force that we had in the late 1990s, but twice the population. So not only do we have an issue of the police not necessarily having the relevant skill sets, but you don't have enough police.
What a mess.
So right now the government is undertaking a serious recruiting drive. They're trying to recruit officers, not just inwardly, but from anywhere across the region. The UK government has agreed to help us create a essentially a guns, drugs, and gangs unit that will be initially staffed by experienced officers from the UK. So that recruitment is taking place. The timeline the premier gave is about 3 months before they're actually active. However, you have gang unit officers from the UK that arrived on Sunday, literally the same day the incident took place. So they landed and went straight to work.
Wow.
And
what does that bring your death toll to now for this year?
I think it's 26, which for us is a record. It's unheard of. I was speaking with some Jamaican friends of mine, and they were like, 26 is no big deal. You have 26 people in Jamaica killed in a day. And I'm like, but you got to understand the gravity within the cultural context. For Jamaica, it's no big deal, but for us, it is absolutely shocking and frightening.
Yep. And Jamaica also has a population of 3 million people.
Exactly.
TCI has what, 30-something thousand?
45. And if you
45.
think about it, 50 people is literally like 1% of our population. So so 26 is a significant number.
Wow. So TCI, unfortunately, making headlines around the world, folks. Everything from regional news, international news, because of this situation. Very, very shocking that they have some 26 murders for this year, and the year still isn't done. And it seems like every time there's an incident, like 2 or 3 people are getting killed at once. It's not like there've been 26 separate incidents that have left people. It's like 3-4 people killed in one go with one incident.
We had roughly about, if I'm remembering correctly, about 15 people killed in September, which is crazy. I posted midway through September, I posted the hashtag Bloody September, and a whole lot of other people just started taking it up, including police officers. And so I've seen lots of other persons referencing Bloody September, and so it's something that's stuck. And I only posted the hashtag because I was just upset, and I said a few words, and I guess it resonated with other persons.
Unbelievable. Wow.
And so now we were only in the second day of October with 4 people killed.
And a tourist, like I said, which is, bound to resonate across the world.
It's not just any tourist. It's one of the most politically active organizations in the United States, the NAACP.
Oh my God.
Which now I'm looking to see, okay, so how is the NAACP going to handle this situation, given that one of their executives was murdered on vacation?
Yep. I see an article dating back to 2015 by our local Cayman News Service, where they say TCI like Cayman faces surge in violent gang crime. So it's not something that has entirely happened overnight. It's been on the radar for a little bit. Why do you think it's taken so long for even the UK to come in and step in and offer some assistance? Because then it just says in this article that 4 officers from the RCIEPS were sent to TCI to help with investigations into a teenager's death at that time. This was Jeff Walken, 19 years old, that was shot during some gunfire after the police showed up at a foiled robbery attempt.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that particular case. There was also the issue of, whether or not the police did the right thing and all of that. But I think, like I said, a lot of this really started getting people's attention in 2013. But persons like myself, who I've done youth work in this country for over 18 years, and we have been complaining about the lack of attention young people get for decades now. I can remember I said to one MP about 15 years ago, I said to one MP, I said, if young people could get the attention, half the attention year round that they get during an election year, we would have no youth problems. Right? During an election year, everybody wants to be at libraries. Everybody wants to be, at youth centers and playing sports. And once elections are done, they disappear.
Mm-hmm.
They disappear. And as someone that does voluntary youth work, that has always angered me. And young people aren't stupid. They see it. They know that they're being used as political props. I remember one event last election, right? The then minister for education, came out to the event, and two young people that were there were like, well, she's only going to be here for about 10 minutes, take some pictures, and then she's leaving anyway. And so sad, so done. She came, she took some photos and left. And when she was leaving, they said, see, we told you. So it's not like the young people aren't stupid. They see what's going on, and they see the message that's being sent. When you stand up on a podium and say the youth are the future, and then you make it as difficult as possible for them to get access to financing to start a business, you make it difficult for them to get access to education and all of these other different things. And I'm not saying that it hasn't gotten better over the years. It's gotten better.
Mm-hmm.
I would be a liar if I said that it hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so much more that can be done. The big
Mm-hmm.
conversation that young people have in this country is that they see persons from the outside coming in and getting opportunities that they wish they could get.
Sounds very, very familiar, actually.
And in particular, when you think about, and this is why I said we also have to be careful of our own internal prejudices.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you speak to children who are of Haitian descent, Jamaican descent, they feel marginalized.
Mm-hmm.
And if they feel like they were born in a country that doesn't love them, doesn't care for them, and doesn't want to give them any opportunities, what do you think are going to happen? And I keep saying it, all we're doing is creating subcultures that have all of the same rights as us, but none of the same love.
Mm-hmm.
And
we have a couple
to
questions. Yes, we have a couple questions and comments here. And folks, don't forget the phone lines are open. 936-BOBO. That's 936-2626. If you have any, comments or questions on this, I'm sure some of you might be shocked to hear what the situation is in TCI. So Ms. Darlene says, Sandy, this hurts me to say this because I have background Jamaican. The truth be told, Jamaica has a criminal DNA. Love them, but it's the truth, all because of their bad governance. I don't know if it's all because of bad governance, but without a doubt, bad governance certainly has not helped. The political arm in Jamaica has definitely fueled gun violence and gang violence and so on, again, for their own political expediency for years. And that has been something that has happened probably from the 40s, 50s, and definitely heightened in the 60s and beyond. Marshall says, anywhere you find Jamaicans, you'll have some trouble. Miss Morna says, it's so sad to see the crime rate is growing so fast over there in TCI. I lived there for almost 5 years and worked there. It's a beautiful place to live. But with the crime being outrageous, they're so small to be uncontrollable with the gangs. Sabrina is asking if there's a visa program between Jamaica and TCI. So can a Jamaican national just go to your country and work? Like, what are the requirements?
No, they require a visa. But like I said, a lot of these persons are essentially in the country illegally because our borders are porous. We've had an illegal immigration issue for years. It's never been a huge problem, but right now we're seeing the effects of uncontrolled illegal immigration.
Mm-hmm. We also have Miss Alma says, I really appreciate the good and decent Jamaicans, but the criminals need to tan it and stop causing havoc in other people's countries. Damien says it's the same with the MS-13 group, which started in the US with drugs, etc. And when gang members were deported, then they started again in Central America. So MS-13 is well known in countries like Honduras, Spanish gangsters. Debbie says, why don't TCI bring in forces from overseas to eradicate the gangs? Well, they have brought in, just to be clear, in a bid now to manage this crime outbreak situation, the governor has acknowledged that firearms specialists from the UK arrived just a couple days ago. Actually, yesterday, this is a story from today, arrived on yesterday's British Airways flight and are now working immediately with the TCI's tactical firearms unit. And extra UK sources will be, absorbed throughout the entire week.
That's actually Sunday, because British
That
Airways.
was Sunday gone. Okay.
Yeah. British Airways comes in on Sunday, which is what I was saying earlier. The officers landed and essentially went straight to work.
Oh my gosh.
Because Sunday was the day of the incident. They've also asked for help from Jamaica, the Bahamas, that will be sending over officers to deal with some of the situation, which is quite I funny in a way, because you have Jamaicans here that say TCI asking for help from Jamaica is ironic.
Right, of course. We see the irony in that. So there is an anti-gangs group of 24 detectives. This is funded by the UK to a preliminary tune of £3 million. And they're doing some recruitment now for that. So Debbie, in short, they're trying to put these teams together. They've got this tactical unit. And you know what, as you were saying that, I kind of chuckled a little bit. I wish we had, a Jamaican representative here today. I know that Andre has been so busy, but the irony is not lost on me that Jamaicans are in part driving and creating the problem. And then you have to try to rely on them to bring them in to help solve the problem, which are they doing a good job of solving the problem in their own countries?
And this
Clearly
is the
not.
question Jamaicans
Clearly not.
questions Jamaicans here were posing, and literally saying, we're not solving the problem in Jamaica. So how can we help you?
Exactly. I mean, I don't know. But I was also thinking that maybe Cayman we need to send some people there to be on the ground in TCI so that we can learn, offer some assistance, but also our people, our detectives and so on, can be learning about what may or may not be working for you guys. This partnership, regional partnership, could be incredibly useful even to us.
I think it's an opportunity for the entire region to learn, because
absolutely.
Security threats are predicted to grow over the next decade. So we know for a fact from a lot of the reports and statistics that these things aren't going to go away. We have to find new ways of dealing with them.
Yes. So Jonathan says, when you got a criminal organization making $15 million a month on just ganja alone, and you got a government that got $100,000 a month budget to fight it, like it's a never-ending war that can't be won. Lacey says, hope that our police commissioner is listening in on this and will do something about our rising situation before it gets worse. We can only hope that the powers that be are listening. Morna says the policemen over there are not fully equipped to face the crime. These gangsters have machine guns. TCI has nothing to face them. They shot a policeman the other day. Very sad. Morning to Charles. Charles says, wow, these comments about Jamaica. Jad, I know better. Charles, it's unfortunate, but it only takes a few bad apples to make an entire situation or an entire country look bad. And, we love our Jamaican brothers and sisters. Like I said, a lot of us, like myself, have a Jamaican husband, Jamaican grandfather, but we cannot deny the realities of crime in Jamaica and what happens in Jamaica. But I appreciate the population is 3 million people. But even if you have 20% of 3 million people who are causing havoc on the country, That's still a significant amount. And then they go to other jurisdictions and they give everybody a bad name. And so, that's the reality of what happens. There was a point in time, even in the Cayman Islands, when we traveled overseas. I'll never forget, in Miami International Airport, one officer was being a customs officer was being trained. And when the person said, "Oh, what flight are you guys coming from?" And I said, "The Cayman Islands." His trainer said, "Oh, don't worry about them. They just come here to shop." Well, we no longer have that reputation because we've had one or two of our own. And like I said, it doesn't take many bad apples trying to bring in illegal, guns and refrigerators and whatever, putting drugs in babies' diapers, trying to go through the US, and they nab them and get incarcerated. So Cayman, even from the perspective of US border control, we're not as innocent as we once were. So we are now subject to the same checks and balances as everybody else, because it's like, yes, maybe the majority of Caymanians are going there to shop, but you still have that 5, 10, 15% who are going there for other nefarious reasons. And so they will scrutinize everyone. And that's exactly, unfortunately, what happens. I mean, I don't think there's a day that goes by in Jamaica that there's not a murder.
And this is the thing. This is the thing, Sandy, that we're trying to get people to understand, is that whether or not it's local persons involved in crime or it's foreign nationals, the fact that the crime is happening here gives everybody a bad reputation, and essentially, it makes it difficult for you to travel, because the US is going to impose certain restrictions to protect themselves, right?
Absolutely.
And we have to understand that. And if we don't deal with the situation in country, it's going to affect us. And I've said, numerous times, that we have to understand that everything is connected. If you think that crime isn't connected to tourism, that isn't connected to the drug trade, that isn't connected to economic opportunities, that isn't connected to youth development, that isn't connected to education and healthcare and all these other different things, then you're fooling yourself. And we need leaders that are going to think about the whole picture and not try to tackle these things as isolated incidents, because they're not. This situation didn't develop overnight, clearly, and this situation isn't about drugs alone. There are youth issues. When you think the police arrested this week a 14-year-old for carrying ammunition, this is a 14-year-old, a school child. That's a serious problem.
Right.
When you think last week, there was a WhatsApp voice note going around with persons talking about planning a school shooting in Turks and Caicos.
Oh my God. Wow.
So if we think these things are going to be isolated to the gangs, then keep fooling yourself. They're going to bring the rest of the population into it.
Wow. And when you talk about this culture of violence, I mean, I often talk about in this program just a culture of lawlessness, where we were talking about it earlier. People don't want to follow the immigration laws. They don't want to follow the pension laws. There's marriages of convenience, where people are coming here using Caymanians to be able to remain in this country so they can do whatever it is that they want. And a lot of that activity is illegal activity. So, we need to pay attention, folks. I mean, if people are asleep at the wheel, it's a problem.
And whether we like it or not, there are immigration or considerations to be taken in terms of immigration. When you look at the communities, there are two communities where the crime is predominantly happening, right? Sunday, when the incident started on Sunday, that is one of the more affluent communities. There is rarely crime, or let me say violent crime, in that neighborhood. It's usually robberies where people are breaking into homes to steal stuff. But if you look at where most of the shootings have happened, it's predominantly two neighborhoods. That's Blue Hills and Five Keys. They're predominantly Haitian and Jamaican communities. And that itself creates tension, because people are saying, look, it's the foreigners. And that is the perception. Mind you, you have local residents that live in these communities, but they're predominantly immigrant communities, and so you create this tension that's continuing to boil, and at some point something is going to happen if government doesn't find a way of alleviating the situation.
Lacey says Jamaicans who the cap fit wear it put their nationality and country out there as being criminal and a bad place. Very sad, but true. Damien says he has a solution. Get the Brits to put a warship and round them up. Ask questions after.
Well, people are literally, I was going to say, people are literally asking for the UK military to come in. And this is a frightening thought for me, because we're essentially asking the UK military to come in and murder people. People are calling for the UK military to come in and eradicate the criminals, exterminate the criminals. When you use language like that, you're essentially saying, we want you to come in and murder people. That's a frightening thought.
Yeah, because that's not obviously how the system works. I mean, a person, even if they are, living in a poor area riddled by violence and whatever, they may not be part of that. So you can't just go in there shooting and killing people without having some trial or something about their guilt or innocence or what it is that they're involved in. But I think it certainly demonstrates a degree of desperation on behalf of the people.
Because people are afraid, eh? Don't get me wrong. People in these communities are afraid, and they would rather you kill the criminals than the criminals kill them. But at the same time, that's not the kind of society we want to create. And I tell persons that you have to be careful what you're asking for, because soldiers train for warfare. They are trained to use maximum force all the time.
So someone is making an observation here. They say that many can't come through the airport. This is actually, I won't name the person, but one of our sort of high-ranking officials here. They said it's not easy to get to TCI from Jamaica by boat. That's why it's so important to remove the Jamaican gang members that are there. And they said that they don't have much of a visa regime on Jamaicans. So what sort of visa requirements do you have for Jamaicans to get into TCI?
There are visa requirements, and it's basically, someone here has to sponsor the visa. But it's not difficult to get. It's not like, unless there's something like quite obvious where you have a recent criminal history or something like that. But usually, if you're a Jamaican applying for a visa to come to TCI, it's usually granted. And because I have persons, family members in Jamaica that ask me all the time to sponsor visas for them, and I tell them I do not sponsor visas for anybody. That's just my philosophy. I don't, I have friends that ask me to do it, and I tell them no. I just don't sponsor visas for people, because essentially that means that I am responsible for you.
Exactly. Soka says exactly, talking some shit about eradicate. Well, folks, we are out of time this morning. It's a very, very sad situation, but I feel like it's a cautionary tale for all of us across the region. We'll continue to have these conversations with our regional partners. I think that if nothing else, this should serve as a wake-up call for all of us, that we need to wake up. We need to pay attention. We need to be vigilant. Everything from immigration and border control to some of the policies that we have in our country. Cayman has taken on this whole, dance hall culture and persona that we are drowning in. And I'm telling you, with that comes a certain element of further criminality and people who have no respect for the law. And we need to shape it up very, very quickly.
Listen, as Black people, we don't like to hear that, but certain music cultures promote certain lifestyles, and that goes with the Black American rap culture, right? And I tell people, I'm not talking 80s rap, I'm talking rap today promotes a particular lifestyle, and dance hall today, because I grew up with dance hall being played in my house by my mom. But dance hall today is something completely different.
Yeah. I mean, some weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, we were naming out all of the there's this whole epidemic in the States where if you're a rapper, you're going to be a dead man in a short period of time, because rappers are constantly being killed in the US. Sometimes it's just somebody trying to grab your big chain that you have around your neck. But the number of rappers compared to any other genre of music that have been eradicated, exterminated, killed by their own people for the most part is just astonishing. You don't have that many country artists being killed. You don't have hip hop, maybe not hip hop. I don't know if that's a good example, but rappers are definitely the worst. But you don't have pop artists or whatever being shot and killed. I mean, it is just go Google it. It is astonishing the number of rappers. Again, because as Damien said, that music, that type of music brings with it a particular type of culture and lifestyle as well. And we have to recognize it for what it is. Soka says, don't call it music. Well, that's what it's called by the young people who are listening to it, young, middle class, whatever, old people. I don't know who all is listening to it, but it's big business. Everybody in Cayman wants to be a promoter. Everybody wants to be the ones to bring in these entertainers, and it is seeping into our culture at a rate that is really, really alarming. Every single weekend, we're going to do a fish fry promotion. We're going to do this. We're going to have a boat cruise, and it's all this boozing and drinking and complete
it's
irresponsibility.
Crypto-colonialism. It's crypto-colonialism, and for persons out there that may not understand that term, it's essentially the occupying of the mind space of another country by another culture, and that's essentially what it is. It's crypto-colonialism. We're being taken over by another culture from afar.
Wow, can we talk about that next week? I'll do some research on crypto-colonialism. I must tell you, I'm not familiar with the term, but I am willing to learn and be taught. And there's a whole I'd see that Vice has a whole thing about it. But yes, let's talk about that, because I think even that is a very interesting concept. Wow. Crazy.
The US has been doing it to us for years.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, we if you're a colony, you do understand how that works. I was just here looking at the Jamaican news, and like I said, there's not a day in Jamaica that there's not some unfortunate murder. This one was posted 9 hours ago, and it says slaughter. This is the Jamaican Observer, and it talks about this guy Norman Pedro Campbell being deported from Canada more than a decade ago, and his sister took him in. And now it seems like, he's run afoul of the law a couple of times. She posted bail on his behalf. And then he is now being arrested for allegedly stabbing his sister to death.
Wow.
And this is the footstep of her house that is now blood-stained with her blood after he brutally killed his own sister. Wow. This is, last week we had in Jamaica a young girl, 17 years old, killed at school by another student, stabbed in the neck, and dies right there at school. The whole thing videotaped by other students. Folks, there's a lot of violence in our communities, in our countries, and it is a sad indictment on all of us. And if we're not having these conversations and we're not trying to do something about it, I feel like we are part of the problem. We have to be part of the solution. Magdalene says, could not have said it better, Brother Damien Wilson. The other Damien says, thank you. You saw the elephant in the room. Soka says, someone bring in Taboo Combo and Kassav. Listen to some sweet music. Gabby says, do I think that has slot to do with our own culture disappearing? Maybe she meant to say a lot to do. As it's not taught much in schools and elsewhere. Let's talk about culture next week and how this crypto colonialism, as Damien calls it, has seeped into all of us. I mean, the culture, listen, it has some huge implications. Years ago, somehow I managed to insult someone when I gave him this bit of factual information. I said, look at all of the gang members and the gang violence that we have here in Cayman. And at least one parent of those children is a Jamaican national. People are like, no, Sandy, you can't say that. That is you being prejudiced against Jamaicans. I said, I didn't say anything except look at the facts. Look at all of those houses. So even if they carry the last name of Bush or Manderson, the mothers are Jamaican. If they have a different last name, the father's a Jamaican. Look at
but
it.
Sandy, we have the
I'm
same
just
problem
saying.
in TCI. The vast majority of violent criminals over the last couple of years. My wife works for, or used to work for, the public prosecution's office. And so I am familiar with a lot of the prosecutors. And so when the vast majority of criminals over the last couple of years are of Haitian and some of Jamaican descent. That's just a fact we can't escape. Am I saying that Haitians and Jamaicans are criminals? No. But I'm saying that the persons who have been caught, arrested, and convicted have Haitian and Jamaican descent. And that's just a fact that I can't change. It is what it is. But at the same time, I'll leave you with this in terms of culture. I started doing a postgraduate certificate in sustainability last year with the University of Illinois. And one of the things they teach you in population dynamics, they talk about this is how to sustain culture. And they tell you that if the birth rate of a particular society falls below a certain number, I forget the rate, then essentially the culture goes in reverse. It starts to die out, right? And it's because you're not having children to continue replenishing the culture and spreading that belief. So what you then have to do is essentially make people as in assimilate them into your culture, or start having more children. So Cayman and Turks and Caicos have to ask themselves, because we have the same complaint about culture.
Yes.
Are we having enough children?
I take issue with this, because a couple weeks ago I was saying that Caymanians who can't afford children need to stop having so many, because it's the people who are in poverty that seem to have the most. But I take your point, but they're not the people that we want overpopulating, because that doesn't help the situation either, right?
Nope.
And the people of financial means are not the ones who tend to have a whole bag of children, because they're like, I can't afford to spend time. It might not be about money.
This is a deep conversation, Sandy, because what people don't understand is that this is why larger countries have huge social security systems. I mean, social welfare systems. Part of that is to incentivize the birth rate so that they maintain culture. I'm sure you've heard of, where they're talking about European populations are aging and so forth. The Japanese are probably the worst in the world right now. They probably have the oldest population in terms of the number of elderly people within their population. So Japanese culture is essentially dying out because young Japanese aren't having children. They're working themselves to death. I myself went and did the calculation for Turks and Caicos. We've already fallen below the rate. And then when you look, 80% of the persons in our schools are of Haitian descent. 80% of all schools. Right? So I'm just saying that when you start talking about culture,
that next week. Yeah. I've got to get to court. I want to hear this extradition hearing that they're having this morning. But Damien, I hope you can come on a little bit earlier next week. I know you're so busy, and I appreciate the time that you allocate for us. But let's dig a bit deeper into this. Let's do a deep dive next week, because this is very, very interesting information. Wow. All right, folks. Charles says, the other Damien Charles says, very true. I saw a documentary on that. Well, we need to educate ourselves, folks, and I'm all about it. So Damien Wilson joining us from TCI. We appreciate you, sir, giving us the time. And these are such deep and meaningful conversations. You're welcome, Magdalene. Tune back in next week, Wednesday. That's our Caribbean Connection Day. We invite all of, we've got a little group there of Caribbean representatives from Jamaica, TCI. I think we've got the Virgin Islands in there. We invite them to be part of the discourse and conversations. I know that everyone is busy, but if we're not agitating and having these discussions, how do we hope to do any better and to develop policies that will help our people? We have to speak the truth. And that, of course, is what this program, The Cold Hard Truth, is all about. Damien, God's willing, we will see you next week. Please be safe.
Thank you. And you as well. All the best to you and your listeners.
Yep. So, folks, like I said, I want to jettison off to court this morning, there's a extradition hearing that I think you guys need to be kept abreast of. So let me get some details on that, and we'll see you back here tomorrow morning, Thursday at 7:30 a.m.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Cold Hard Truth on Bobo 89.1 FM. Cayman's #1 talk show is live weekdays from 7:30 a.m. Never miss an episode again. Watch anytime on CMR's Facebook and YouTube channels for the latest show episodes. Don't forget to follow us online on our social media channels. And visit CaymanMarlRoad.com for all the latest news and community happenings.